The clerk call the roll, which means vote the roll. Sorry.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Okay, we have two bills that were on the docket last week that we didn't get to, and I'm going to take those up if that's okay with the patron. And the first one is Senator Howell's bill. Is that okay with you? You can do it from here. It's Senate Bill 65.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. What this bill does is require the candidates for president or vice president, in order to be on the ballot in Virginia, will need to release 5 years of income tax returns, both state and federal. It also says that those returns will be made public. And as you all know, since Nixon, every presidential candidate has released their tax forms. It's become a custom and something that voters expect, but in this last election that didn't happen. So what I'm trying to do is to make it clear that to be on the ballot in Virginia for president or vice president, you need to release 5 years worth of state and federal tax returns.
Okay, is there anybody here who wishes to speak in favor of the bill? Is there anybody who wishes to speak in opposition to our Trump tax return bill? I will make a little observation about this just by way of background for the committee. In the chair's notes, I will just let you know that this has been introduced in other states. It has not passed, mostly because it is considered a candidate qualification and something that therefore is not constitutional for states to enact. The California passed the legislation. It went to the governor. The Democratic governor actually vetoed the bill for that reason. So while I respect the patron's intention here, I think it's probably an issue, a constitutional issue, and if there's no further discussion, I would entertain a motion.
Move
Yes.
PBI.
Yes, Senator Howell.
I would just point out it's never been litigated.
I'll make a substitute motion, Madam Chair.
Yeah, substitute motion.
Substitute motion report.
Okay, the motion's been made to report and properly seconded. All in favor of reporting Senate Bill 65, please vote aye.
Ayes 5, noes 7.
Okay, bill fails to report. All right, so now we need to go back to the previous motion, which was to PBI Senate Bill 65. The motion's been made and properly seconded. All in favor of PBIing Senate Bill 65, please vote aye.
Ayes 7, noes 5.
Okay. The next bill we have is, I don't know if Senator Chase is here. She's not here. She just left. Okay. Okay. Then patrons we have in line is, first in line is Senator Suderline.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've got two bills. Do you prefer one before the other?
Let's see, what's your first bill? You can take them in the order
All right, I've
you
got
wish.
Senate Bill 264. It's a campaign finance disclosure bill. What it does is it similar to when we all file to run for the General Assembly and we have to file our campaign finance reports, we now have to file electronically. It took a long time to get to that point. Localities, though, still are allowed to file by paper. And one of the consequences of that, coupled with the decreased political press corps, is in several localities, those finance reports and notable items in those finance reports no longer make it into the paper, and they don't go anywhere online. And that would require anyone that wants to see it to have to drive to the registrar's office. I think that we all benefit, especially at the local level, from seeing those contributions. There was a supervisor's race near me where after it was discovered some large contributions that might have issue with county business, it had a significant impact on the election several years ago. So my bill recognizes, though, that it might be a challenge in some very small localities to file electronically, and so it puts a cap at 70,000. So if you're in a county over 70,000, you have to file by electronic report if you're going to run for supervisor or constitutional office, or if you're in a city and you're running for city council.
Okay. Is there anybody, any member of the committee has a question of the patron?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Sproul.
Madam Chairman, I'm sorry. So are you doing this just for the press? Are you doing it for someone who need help? I mean, help with the press. So that's what I feel about the press. Are you doing this just to satisfy the press, or are you doing it because it's really needed?
No, well, the press corps did not ask me to bring the bill. Where I see, and I haven't talked with them about other than to say, hey, I think this is a bill you should like, but they haven't approached me on it. This is especially an issue in some of my larger localities where it's no longer being reported, these campaign finance reports at all.
Okay.
And so that the goal is, it would be easier for the press because they could get it online. The press, I mean, if it's not that big a hassle if you're a reporter to go spend some of your business hours at the registrar's office. I think that's easy to convince your editor that you're doing that. But it's harder for the regular public to get the information if the press isn't reporting on it. But if it's going straight online at the State Board of Elections website, and I imagine other websites like VPAP might, like once it's on electronic, be happy to report it as well. I just think it would be helpful to the man and woman at home that want to know what's happening in their jurisdiction and why they might find it curious that, you know, someone that wasn't politically active, as a developer, is all of a sudden politically active, or some other industry.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Is there any, Senator Howell?
I actually like this bill almost in its entirety because I do believe that the public has a right to know these matters, but I see no reason to have a population determination of 70,000, which is probably about half the jurisdictions in the state. So what's the rationale for that, and would you object to taking it out?
I want the bill to pass, and I want the bill to pass. I definitely want it to be in the larger localities. To give you an idea, 70,000, that's James City County is one of the counties near there. The counties I represent, like Roanoke County, Montgomery, would be affected because they're approaching 100,000. Roanoke City, which is nearby me, would be affected. But my smaller counties, like Floyd County, it's got 15,000. They would not be affected. And one of the things that at least crosses my mind in my district is if you're running for, these are all very important offices that have huge impacts on the citizens' lives, but if you're running in Floyd, the Floyd Press has, they're covering their local elections very well. They've got a paper just for their county, and it's not an issue for their reporter to go into the registrar's office. And some of my larger localities, even though there's larger papers with larger resources, they're just not choosing to do this, so the information's not getting to the citizens in the same way. I also am less concerned, if you're in a county of 15,000 like Floyd, news gets around a lot quicker than in Roanoke County with a population approaching 100,000. So I want my bill to pass, and I don't want to create new problems with other localities, but it's before you all. If you all see it different, I'm happy to hear your thoughts.
Okay, is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak in support of the bill? Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak in opposition to the bill?
Second.
So there's a motion? Senator Sproul.
I move the report.
Move to report?
Madam Chairman,
Senator Howell,
may I move an amendment?
you may move an amendment. Yes, you may.
I would like to amend the bill on line 19, striking with a population of more than 70,000.
Would the patron accept that as a friendly amendment?
Madam Secretary.
Yeah.
I mean, Madam Chairman. Before
Yes.
he answers that question, I would point out that a lot of rural counties do not have broadband. I would be delighted to support that amendment in the future when we have more widespread broadband, but right now it would be a major problem in the rural communities.
Madam Chairman,
Senator Howell.
it would be possible to, after this amendment, to further amendment, to amend to exempt counties with no broadband.
Senator Ruff.
Madam Chairman, I would point out that broadband is hit and miss. If you say 0 or you say 100%, you're wrong in every case. So we've got time, a few years before we'll have widespread broadband.
Madam Chair,
I'll vote against the bill.
I agree exactly what Senator Ruff is saying. I agree, 1%.
Gonna nail it.
Okay, so there is not a second to the amendment. Okay, so hearing none, the bill is before us.
Been moved to report.
It's been moved by Senator, yes, the motion's been made and properly seconded to report Senate Bill 264. All in favor, please vote aye.
Ayes 11, noes 2.
Okay, the bill passes. Okay, your next bill.
My next bill is Senate Bill 263. This is a bill that's been favorably reported by this committee and by the Senate for the last 2 years.
And I'm going to stop you for 1 second. I know that Senator Chase is not here, but this bill is similar to Senate Bill 144 and to Senate Bill 720. I'm sorry. So the motion was made to roll those together? Senate Bill 144, Senate Bill 720, and Senate Bill 263? Okay. So that's been made and properly seconded. All in favor, please vote aye. Yes, Senator Sproul.
Quick question on that.
Yes.
The Senate Bill 144 is my bill. We can roll it together in a way possible. We could see what it looks like first before
I would like to roll it into your bill and make you're the lower bill number, and then I would like to get to a place where, so that we're not sending out any bills that are inconsistent, if we can agree on one bill that you're happy with too.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes. Okay. So Senator Suderline, you want to explain your bill, and then we'll have the opportunity to hear from Senator Sproul. And we'll explain the differences among each bill.
What my bill does is it provides that a candidate that is nominated by a political party for an existing partisan office will so be identified on the ballot as such. It also makes it clear that offices that have nonpartisan by nature of their charter would not be affected by it. The thinking behind the bill is the Commonwealth has already established these offices to be partisan offices. In several cases, taxpayers are paying for state-run primaries to nominate these folks. The city of Charlottesville pretty much always has a contested Democratic primary that's paid for by taxpayers. Bedford County near me almost always has a Republican primary that's contested that's paid for by taxpayers. There's jurisdictions all around the state, and every time there's a contested primary, taxpayers pay. And so we've already decided that it's worth the state resources to do it, and it's a partisan office, but then we do not put it on the ballot. I would suggest that the reason it's not on the ballot goes back to the Byrd organization when they didn't want everyone to be clear on who they were nominated by. I think that voters want to know who nominated them, and we've already decided. But also, I again want to highlight, the bill makes it clear that if you have the nonpartisan provision in your charter, or if it's a nonpartisan election to begin with, you're fine. These are already partisan offices. It's not making anything different on that subject. So I hope it'll be the pleasure of the committee to pass it.
Chair,
Senator Deeds.
Mr.
Senator Sudalan, you're assuming that people can't read the paper or don't read the paper, and you're basically, this is for the low information voter who gets their information with respect to a candidate from the ballot.
No, I would point out that there's a lot of folks down the hall who might not be here right now if they didn't have a D next to their name this last November. And the voters chose that. They wanted they wanted to pick a candidate for governor they liked, and they wanted to pick someone that voted for it. In the same way that someone's voting for a mayor in a city, and they might not know all the council candidates, but they know they want to vote for someone that's going to support the program. In some local years, we have a very long ballot. And I think that the same reason we put on for electors for president, which party they are. I think everyone knows that Mr. Trump and Mr. Pence and Mrs. Clinton and Senator Kaine were all with their respective parties, but we decided a long time ago that it made sense to put Republican Party and Democratic Party electors for and their names. So I think it's perfectly reasonable. We have it next to our names when we run, too.
Okay, by way of comparison, if I may, and maybe Senator Sproul, you want to offer an explanation, but yours is broader and would also capture constitutional officers. You want to speak to your bill? Sure, absolutely.
I would just add mine also hits constitutional
Okay.
offices. I like you too.
Madam Chair, let me use the two examples. I represent part of Chesapeake and Norfolk. In Chesapeake, for example, Senator John Cosgrove, Chief of Staff, ran. Okay, now, she had to run, they had a primary, I assume. She had to run in a Republican primary, but could not be on the ballot. So those of us who like her, who are Democrats, we couldn't vote in that, but they could not say what is the DRR. In the city of Norfolk, the sheriff, who is a Democrat, had problem with our party because they asked it, if you run in this primary, then if you lose, you will not run in the general election. But the primary does not say that you're a Democrat. You can't say that. So I said to him, but don't do anything. Just wait and run independently on the ballot, because on the ballot, there's nothing on the ballot. But he had to run in the Democratic primary, and he won the primary, but then when he got ready to face his opposition, he could not put a D on the ballot. So why run in the Democratic primary, be on the ballot as nothing? You had 5 people running, and the people could not understand, well, why did you run in the Democratic primary, but you're not on the ballot? And we believe that Christy Craig, my friend who's a Republican, had been able to be put on the ballot one way or the other, they could have won. So why go through a primary, whether it's a Republican or Democratic primary, and then when the election time comes, you can't be put on the ballot? Don't put nothing, don't have no primary either way if you can't be put on the ballot. Mine's saying that if you do that, have a D either or, if you can have a primary.
I think that's
Okay.
well said.
Well said. And then I'm just going to add, I know that Senator Chase is not here, but she has Senate Bill 720, which she also was introducing in the form of a substitute this afternoon before this committee. Her bill does the same thing. It would say that if you are nominated by a political party, your name would appear with your party affiliation. The only distinction she makes, and this is a pretty big one, is it allows the candidate to choose whether or not they would have their party affiliation appear. So that would be up to the discretion of this committee whether you would like the 720 version, where you have the discretion of the candidate, or you would like the straight-up version that the two of you have proposed, which just says straight up, if you have been nominated by a party, then therefore that would be disclosed to the voters.
Madam Chairman. Question to you, Madam Chairman. And what you
Senator
were saying, is how can you choose if you decide to run in the primary? There is no choose. Either don't run in the primary, just run. If you decide to run in the primary, you either got to be either DRR in that primary. So you can't win a primary and then choose what you want to be. So don't choose no party, just run.
Madam
If you go
Chairman.
in the primary, it has to be one or the other.
Senator Cosgrove.
Madam Chairman, I think we ought to go with the language in Senator Spruill's, Senator Suderline's bill. It'd be a whole lot less confusing. The point has been made eloquently by Senator Spruill that basically if you want to run in a partisan primary, then run the partisan primary. If you don't, then don't. And you can still be on the ballot, but I support the text of this bill.
So if that's a motion, I would
I move to-
second that motion. Okay. Okay, so the motion's been made and properly seconded to roll the three bills together in the substance of the two bills that are before us now. And Meg, would you like to speak to that?
Madam Chair, I just wanted to clarify, Senator Suderline's is a little broader than Senator Spruill's. Senator Spruill's only addresses constitutional officers. So if we move forward and roll these bills together, I wanted to clarify which substance we'd like.
Right, Senator Spruill is only constitutional officers. Senator Suderline is any local.
All officers.
Currently partisan offices, Madam Chair.
Madam Chair,
Senator Peake.
if we can speak into the bill, I think if you were going to run in a primary or a nomination contest to get a party label, then you should have that party label on the ballot. And so therefore, I would go with Senator Spruill's. I think it should cover Board of Supervisors, City Council, Sheriff.
Right, right.
I thought, is it Suderlines that does that? I
So
thought the-
Senator Spruill, can I ask you, would you be comfortable in, since in substance you support that if you're nominated by a party, then therefore you should be prepared to disclose that. Would you be comfortable expanding that beyond just constitutional officers to the broader language of Senator Suderline's?
Now, but that's provided, but I understand, my understanding that a lot of localities don't have partisan elections.
Madam Chairman, I might be able to clarify this.
Senator Cosgrove.
Senator Suderline's bill only says that if there is a partisan nomination for those offices, then they would have that designation on the ballot. In Chesapeake, we have nonpartisan city council elections. It would not be on the ballot. Even if the local parties endorse, that's not a primary. So they would not have that designation on the ballot. So Senator Suderline's bill, I think, covers all we're trying to
It
do
would be
here.
consistent with the spirit of your bill,
But it's still,
where
it
you're
would
looking
still
for
be
disclosure.
recognized- Madam Chair, it would still be recognized as Senate Bill 144.
Still your bill.
Will you be a Democrat?
Wow.
For this bill, you will.
I'm fine, either way.
Okay. So I think we have an understanding that his bill doesn't in any way violate the principle that you're trying to put forward, which is if you've been nominated by a party primary, then you're willing to disclose that. And in a case where he refers to in Chesapeake where it doesn't happen, it doesn't matter. Even if you've been endorsed by a party, it will not be an issue. Right, we are. Right. So we will roll those three bills in together and we'll use Senator Suderline's language, and it will be Senate Bill 144, which is Senator Spruill's bill. And I will separately confer with Senator Chase to explain to her, I'm presuming that she will be okay with this, because clearly we have the votes in the committee.
Madam Chair, does it need to be a separate motion to incorporate as chief co-patron?
Yes. So we need a motion to roll them together and okay, so the motion's been made and properly seconded to roll the three together and make them chief co-patrons on Senate Bill 144. All in favor, please signify by saying aye, or no, voting aye. Okay?
Ayes 10, noes 3.
Okay. Ayes 10, noes 3. So we're incorporating, that was to roll them together and incorporate into Senator Spruill's Senate Bill 144. That's okay. We knew what you meant. Okay, now, the bill is properly before us. I think everybody understands the substance of the bill. Is there any further discussion? Anybody else who wishes to speak on the bill? Okay. Okay. Oh, please, I'm so sorry. Come forward. Welcome.
Thank you. Mike Polychronos with the Virginia Municipal League. Our own concern is there's only a handful of localities who have it in their charters that to do nonpartisan election. As Senator Cosgrove is correct, his is one of them. The one I was a town council member for 18 years also has it in their charter. Our concern would be with those localities that don't that don't have it in their charters, but choose to have nonpartisan elections for their mayor and their city and town councils or their board of supervisors. That would be our concern with this bill. And therefore, if there's some assurance that this doesn't affect them, and they can continue to have their nonpartisan elections, then not. But I haven't been assured that that is the case.
Okay. And maybe May can speak to this, or Senator Sproul can speak to this, but
If they don't have it in their charter, regardless of what we say, if they don't have it in their charter, then they can't have it. It has to be in their charter.
Yeah, they're already partisan elections. There's no board of supervisors in the Commonwealth that has nonpartisan elections.
But there are cities and towns in the Commonwealth that don't have it in their charter that do.
But the charter
And we
has,
want to protect,
Yes, sir.
and our mission is to protect it.
but the charter has to be changed to do it. So if you don't change the charter, then it'll be all right.
Madam Chairman.
Matt,
yes, Senator Deeds.
Madam Chair, that the reality is, and there are large parts of the Commonwealth that maybe they're partisan in theory, but they don't run it's either Democrats or Republicans. And my fear is that the introduction of the level of partisanship you're talking about, put identification on the ballot, is going to introduce a level of discord. And the current polarization that we see in Washington and sometimes we see here will take place in some of our county seats. And I just don't think that's such a good thing. I think our local governments have, that when people can work together as neighbors and friends instead of as Democrats and Republicans, sometimes they get a lot more done.
Somebody.
Madam Chair, there's nothing in this bill that makes someone run as a Republican or a Democrat. This bill, anybody can run as an independent, as Senator Sproul has pointed out. And then if they want to get a party nomination, they get a party nomination. But we're not forcing anybody to do anything. They don't have to be partisan if they don't want to be partisan. But if they get a Republican or Democrat or Libertarian nomination, it's put on the ballot. It is very simple. It's full disclosure.
You may be precluding some people from running who are federal employees if they're faced with a partisan election. That's what I'm saying.
And Madam Chair, that raises another question. Because I was just responding to Senator Sutherland, who said that they're all partisan elections anyway. But what if someone wants to be nominated by the Free Love Party, and they say we're Free Love? Is that party also going to be identified on the ballot?
Do you want me to speak to that?
Yes, Senator Suderline. Yes. Please respond.
So in this fine bill brought forward by Senator Sproul that I think is great, there's Democrats and Republicans working together despite that concern that was just expressed. And we saw that on multiple bills today, as I had bills where my Republican colleagues spoke against it and the Democratic colleagues spoke for it. But we already have rules in the Commonwealth that aren't affected by this bill on who gets to have their party name on the ballot. When you talk about different alternative named parties, they have to have a state central committee. It's already in other code sections that this committee deals with. This bill doesn't affect that. These offices we're not making any new office partisan. You cannot run for town council and get nominated in a Republican or Democratic primary in the Commonwealth. That's just not an opportunity that exists. I'm not aware of it existing anywhere. If you run for Board of Supervisors, here's every candidate that chooses to run in every Republican Party or Democratic county committee can set up a primary and that they run. It's not introducing anything new to that. They're already, the city councils, like I said, Charlottesville is already there. Cities that want to have nonpartisan elections already have them, and other cities can seek them if they want. This isn't making any new office partisan. It's the exact same way it currently is. It just says we're going to publicly acknowledge on the ballot what they are and what the taxpayers have paid for, just like Senator Sproul said.
Is there anybody else who wishes to speak in opposition to the bill? Is there anybody who wishes to speak in favor of the bill? Okay. Okay. The motion's been made to report the bill, Senate Bill 144, been made and properly seconded. All in favor of reporting Senate Bill 144, please vote aye.
Ayes 9, noes 4.
Okay, thank you. The bill passes. Okay, the next person on our list is Senator Wexton. Welcome, Senator Wexton.
I have Senate Bill 165. Senate Bill 165 would add another form of photo ID that would be acceptable for voting, and that is a valid ID with a photo issued by a private entity licensed in whole or in part by the Department of Health, Department of Social Services, DMAS, or DBHDS. There are about 35,000 Virginians living in assisted living facilities at this time. There are at least that many in nursing homes, and that does not even include all of the independent living communities and continuing care retirement facilities that are popping up everywhere. I have a couple of them in my district. And as you know, many seniors in these facilities and homes do not have driver's licenses or have expired licenses. This legislation would seek to make it easier for them to vote. Seniors are one of the groups who are most likely to be negatively affected by voter ID laws, yet they are among our most active voters. Florida has a voter ID law, and they allow what's called retirement community IDs that are acceptable for voting, and they have not had any problems with fraud or anything like that as a result of those retirement community IDs. This came to me as through some folks at one of my continuing care rehab facilities as a suggestion, so that's where it came from.
Okay, we have heard this bill before. Is there any member of the committee who has a question for the patron? Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak in support of the bill? Please come forward. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My name is Sue Mosher. I live in Arlington, Virginia, and I work with Spread the Vote as a volunteer helping people get photo IDs and other IDs so that they can vote. We recently took our message to Arlington Neighborhood Village, which is an organization that helps people, seniors, stay in their homes. And one of the stories that we heard there was of a woman who cannot get a photo ID now because her marriage license is lost and she cannot obtain a substitute without going in person, perhaps to Michigan. And so she cannot produce the documentation that would get her the full ID. She's resident in a retirement home. She wants to vote. These cases come up all the time. And so I strongly support Senator Wexton's bill, and I hope to see our photo voter IDs expanded to use these IDs for people who've already been very carefully vetted by their residences. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I'm Valerie Philgrove with the League of Women Voters of Virginia. And while the League of Women Voters doesn't normally support any photo ID, we would, however, go along with this because it opens up another realm for older people to be able to get the ID. I know I went through this with my own mother, and if you do not have a supportive family to stay in there with you and help you get the ID that you need, then you're left out in the cold. So yes, we would support this.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak in opposition to the bill? Okay. Is there any discussion, members of the committee? Okay, the motion's been made and properly seconded to report Senate Bill
Madam
165. Senator Cosgrove.
I have a substitute motion to pass by indefinitely.
Okay. The substitute motion is to pass the bill by indefinitely. It's been made and properly seconded. All in favor of passing it by indefinitely, please vote aye.
Ayes 7, noes 6.
Okay, the bill is passed by indefinitely. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Next on our list is Senator McClellan. Is she here? She's not here. Okay, great. Okay, so Senator Eben here? No, I was going to say maybe I'd take up my resolutions. Yes. You want to do that? Okay. So Senator Edwards is not here. He is sick.
Madam Chair, I'll play the role.
But we
today.
have an even better surrogate for Senator Edwards in Senator Deeds. So Senator Deeds, would you like to start?
If I can just operate from right here.
Mm-hmm.
Senate Bill 150, my information is the registrar from the city of Richmond will testify on that bill. Michelle Walter, are you here? Yes. 150, and it changes one of the criteria for determining when an electoral board is required to ascertain the total votes for each write-in candidate for an office when less than 5% of the total number of votes cast for that office are write-in to when less than 20% of the votes cast are write-ins. Is that basically it?
Madam Chair.
Welcome.
Thank you. Kirk Showalter, Registrar for the City of Richmond and member of the Voter Registrars Association Legislative Committee. This is a bill supported by the association for this reason. It doesn't do anything but change the threshold from 5% to 20% of when we have to take all the names of all the write-in votes cast in a particular election and transcribe them into one gigantic report, essentially.
Senator Deeds.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Madam Chair. So as I recall, then this is probably a bill I voted against in past years. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
And Senator Deeds, this was a bill that I attempted to introduce. And because my ability to explain higher, or in this case, lower math is so poor, that it stumbled out of here and I think got to the House side, correct, Cameron? And then we were not sufficiently able to explain it there. And it didn't work. So now between Senator Edwards and Senator Deeds, we might fare better. What we were trying to do is affect some economy here and provide some relief to some folks who have a very serious problem.
Madam Chair, I understand.
Senator Deeds.
I've got a newspaper publisher that loves to publish the names of every single write-in candidate, a write-in person who gets a vote. 138 votes here, all the way down to one vote here, one vote for Mickey Mouse. He has a whole column for it. And I simply can't go home having voted for this bill.
So Senator Deeds, I want Senator Deeds to be able to go home.
Oh, right.
And we had, in anticipation of Senator Deeds' concern, we had a discussion earlier this morning about this bill, and understanding that there are some registrars that are desperate for relief here. And one of the suggestions that was made was that perhaps we could amend the bill to include a provision that would allow for the provision of those. Here comes the registrar. Yeah, you want to help me here? I'm floundering. Cameron.
Madam Chair, I appreciate the opportunity earlier today to discuss some opportunities for.
You should tell the committee who you are, just in case.
Cameron Sassnet, General Registrar for Fairfax County, and also speaking on behalf of the VRAV Legislative Committee. One of the opportunities to amend this would also to include a provision that would allow for any person at a given time immediately after the election to follow what is going to be necessary eventually, a qualification form for that office in which he would intend to seek. So if someone were to wage a write-in campaign, they could wage a write-in campaign, but immediately after the election, say 24 hours, if they were to file a qualification form, which you all had to file at any time that you sought office, and any person who would be elected by write-in would have to file regardless. They would file it within that time period, and then we could use that to go through the write-ins to determine, for the purposes of reporting with the abstract results, all the write-ins actually cast for that specific person. None of these provisions, whether in current form or amended form, as the chair is suggesting, would preclude any person from having access to the statement results and the tapes. That is where your columnist would get the Mickey Mouses and as well the Donald Ducks and any of the other cartoon characters that we normally under current law and procedure would invalidate during the process that we would go through when reporting the names of people receiving those results. And Some of us are even working towards trying to make that an even more transparent process after the election. However, in the immediacy during the certification, we have the canvass going on, which is the #1 priority to make sure that we canvass the results. #2, we also have the provisional review going on to make sure that any person who casts a provisional ballot is given the opportunity and the research to make sure that provisional ballot can be counted. And those are the top 2 priorities. So if we had a little bit of relief from the write-ins when the threshold is not anywhere near making a significant impact on the abstracted results, we greatly appreciate that. And I think this bill and the potential amendment would resolve that.
So can I ask you a question?
Yes, ma'am.
If we amended it accordingly to this discussion, that would both accomplish what it is that you intend to accomplish with respect to the immediate need with the canvas, but then also that would not preclude or create any additional hurdle for purposes of what Senator Deeds wishes to accomplish, which would be to make reasonably prompt available the names of the individual write-ins.
So, Madam Chair, the names of the individual write-ins by current law that is not affected by any of this is still going to be required to be retained in the office and publicly
It'll be on your
accessible
tape, correct?
on the tapes and the records with the statement of results of all the names, regardless if they're canvassed and included or not.
Madam Chair? If I may provide a point of clarification that everybody may not be aware of, is that the names of all the write-in votes are already there. They are already there on each precinct results tapes. So at any point, anybody could go over either to the court while the canvass is going on or to the registrar's office and precinct by precinct view all the names of the write-in votes. That doesn't disappear. That stays the same. The only thing that this bill would do is if there was more than 5% of write-in votes of the total votes cast. So if you had 1,000 votes cast and 5% of those votes were write-in votes, then we would have to go through all the names from each precinct and transcribe them in one compiled report. That is all that we're asking that it be done, lift it from 5% to 20%. So Senator Deitch, your newspaper man could still get the individual precincts tapes. And yes, sir.
Madam Chair?
Senator Deeds, do you like it any better?
But it sounds like you're shifting the work from the registrar to the inquisitive reporter. Is that right?
Actually, the registrar and the electoral board in that 15% range. Yes, sir.
Madam Chair?
Senator Sproul.
Then answer this question then. What happened then? I'm hearing what Senator Deeds say that he can't go home. Then let's say in Chesapeake, for example, John Cosgrove is my friend. He's a Republican by mistake, but he's my friend. And so I don't vote against him. Now, but I write his name in, So then, if they put in the paper that the Democrats, what you doing supporting John Cosgrove? Well, he's my friend. I don't want nobody to know who I vote for. I'm not going to vote against him. So if I write his name in, then you can put in the paper, Democrats can say, Stewart voted for a Republican. Then how can I go back home?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
The listing of the write-ins are only a listing of the names written in, not who wrote that name in.
Okay. So I can still vote for John Cosgrove?
You can still vote for John
Yes, sir.
Cosgrove.
Yes,
Yes, sir.
sir.
Thank you.
You're still safe. Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
Mick,
Cameron.
we typically see these higher thresholds when there are unopposed candidates. And Madam Chair, if I may, to the Senator, if the Senator's Bill 144 were to pass designating the party with the candidate, we might see an increase in write-ins if there are some designations of party affiliation attached to a name. So this might actually be a win-win for your bill as well as for the registrars as well to make sure that we accurately and efficiently account for all the results of the election.
Okay, is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak on the bill who has not already spoke? Yes. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Walt Latham, Registrar in York County and President of the Registrars Association. Specifically to Senator Deeds' question, this would actually make it easier for your reporter, because if your reporter, the list that this deals with is the list that we send from the county or city to Richmond. If your reporter is looking at that list, they are possibly getting an incomplete list. The way we report to Richmond is we take all the Mickey Mouses and Donald Ducks. Sometimes we've been trying to do it really fast, and so we don't necessarily weed them out. But when we have the time, we take the Mickey Mouses, Donald Ducks, and Jesus Christ, which we've had those too, and treat them as invalid votes. And we just chalk them up as invalid votes, and we don't report them to Richmond. Your reporter is not, I can almost guarantee you, getting this information from the Department of Elections. They're going to your registrar's office to get this information, and that information would not be changing at all. The only thing this would change is what we then take and transcribe and send to Richmond. So I don't think your reporter is getting that from Richmond, and if they are, it's possibly incomplete anyway. This would just change it so that we're not reporting the write-ins when you get 94% of the vote.
Madam Chair.
Senator Deeds.
Then I want to make sure I understand this, that you're not talking about not counting certain lower write-in votes. You're just talking about the reports you have to make
That's
to the
exactly
State Board
right.
of Elections in Richmond. Okay.
Yeah, we're not, they are still counted. I'm not sure, it might even be in the state constitution. The write-ins have to be counted. The only thing this does is that if you vote for, if I vote for myself, it's just one vote and everyone votes for themselves, and it's enough to get, say, 6% against you in a state Senate race. The registrar is not having to then make a report of all the 6% and send them by name to Richmond, but my name would still be on file there at the registrar's office, and that's probably, I would hope that's where your reporter, that's where they should be directed to get the information.
Senator Deeds.
You would still report that 6% of the vote was write-in against me. You would still report that.
Right, because otherwise our numbers wouldn't balance. So let's say there were 100 votes, I mean, in simplifying this, let's say there were 10,000 votes for state senator, and, 3,000, not that 3,000 would have a reason to write in against you, but, we'll go with 500. Let's say 500. No, it's 500 votes, people just write in, their mom or whoever. We would still report those 500 votes. It's just that if a member of the public, a reporter, wanted to see who those were for, they would do, if this passes, next year they would do what they would do now, which is go to the registrar's office, look at the tapes or the statement of results, and see who those votes were for. So none of that would change. All the information that's available would still be the same. The only thing that would change is us having to then reduce this a second time in writing and send to Richmond, which I would be blown away if any local reporter is going to Richmond to look at these bits of information.
Madam Chair.
Senator Deeds.
If I voted against this bill in the past, I was not thinking about it correctly, or I'd not read it fully.
Thank you, Senator.
Okay. Okay, committee operates on a motion. I think we now thoroughly understand the bill. Is there a motion? Okay, the motion's been made and properly seconded to report Senate Bill 150. All in favor, please vote aye. Yes, and Senator Deeds has done what I could not do last year. Congratulations. Okay.
Ayes 9, noes 4.
Okay, the next bill that's Senator Edwards' bill is Senate Bill 153, I think. Okay, you could do 151, sorry. Yep. I have to go present a bill in a minute, and if you do 153, I might be able to assist because I had an amendment.
Okay. Well, 153, my information is also that Ms. Showalter will speak to it. This is a bill that clarifies the documents that independent candidates must file to appear on the ballot and requires the offices. Ms. Showalter, you can explain the bill.
Yes, sir. Thank you again, Madam Chair. Kirk Showalter, City of Richmond. Right now, current law or the recently enacted law for independent candidates to determine their order on the ballot is just in order of filing. There's a question of filing what and when. And that can be very important to some independent candidates. Does it mean all the documents? Does it mean the first document? This bill would simply clarify that all your forms have to be in, and you have to submit your petition signatures containing at least the minimum required to qualify. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to qualify with those signatures, but it just gives us registrars a framework and electoral board members in which to determine who goes first on the ballot.
Okay, is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak in favor of the bill. We had a discussion earlier, and in deference to clarity and simplicity, there was a recommended amendment, and I would like to at least pose that to the committee and see if Mrs. Showalter would be open to that. And if there are any concerns or questions, we can hold it over so that we can confer with Senator Edwards. But perhaps, is Alex here? No? Okay. Are there any registrars who would like to speak to it? I'm going to let Meg explain it. Here, you want to take it? Do you want one? Okay. What we were trying to do in an effort to meet your objective, but at the same time make it as simple as possible, we had some suggested amended language to make it very simple. Meg, you want to explain
Madam
this?
Chair, on line 45, after filed, we're going to strike all of the following documents, colon, Romanet 1. And then on line 46, after section 24.2-501, we're going to strike the comma all the way through to the end of the sentence. And then we're going to insert a new sentence that says, the general registrar shall write on the statement of qualification the date and time of filing. So, for the purpose of this subsection, time of filing for the office means the time at which an independent candidate has filed a statement of qualification pursuant to section 24.2-501. The general registrar shall write on the statement of qualification the date and time of filing.
I had a request from a registrar, at least to consider this language, to keep the date and time of filing to only one document, and therefore all the rest of the documents could follow at some other point. The concern was just to make it as simple as possible, and the less complicated, the better it would be for the registrars. So if you would consider that a friendly amendment that would also achieve your objective, that's fine. If not, then we can carry it over and discuss it in the interim between now and next Tuesday.
Madam Chair, I can't, of course, speak for the entire committee or association, not having discussed it with them, but it is consistent with our objective, which is to have a bright line as to when the candidate filed and when the candidate did not. And certainly, having to track multiple documents is more complex than having to track one single document.
Right. And I
Move the
apologize.
amendment, Madam Chairman.
Yeah.
Second.
I apologize that I did not get a chance to speak with you about that in advance,
right.
but I figured one smart registrar or two can speak for many smart registrars. Okay. So the amendment's been moved and properly seconded. All in favor of adopting the amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. So now the simpler, but hopefully language that achieves your same objective is now before us in the amended language.
Madam Chairman, I would move to report as amended.
Okay. So the motion's been made to report
Second.
as amended Senate Bill 153. All in favor, please vote aye. Okay. The bill passes.
Ayes 12, noes 1.
That's 12 noes, 1. Okay, Senator McClellan, I apologize. We had called you before and you weren't here, and I didn't see that you came back. We're going to take up your bill. I'm going to go and present a bill in another committee, and Senator Reeves is going to take over the gavel.
Thank you. Apologize for that. I had to go give a proxy. Senate Bill 358 was a bill that was also requested by Kirk Showalter, who can give a little more detail on why it's needed. But basically, right now, local voting registrars have to advertise every voter registration event they attend or sponsor, even if they just attend as an invitee and they are not the actual sponsor. And even if that event is at a place that is closed to the public, like a high school. And as a result, our registrars have had to either decline invitations to participate in a voter registration drive, particularly at high schools, unless they advertise, which it can be a fiscal burden. This made sense when the voter registration laws were first put in place, and the only place you could go to register was with the registrar. But now it has actually put us in an odd position where the local election expert cannot even come to a registration drive to talk about voting or voter registration, even if she's just an attendee and not sponsoring that event. And so I put this bill in to fix that problem, and Ms. Showalter can answer questions if I can't.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Deeds.
With the school, I can understand what you're talking about, and that makes perfect sense, but can you give me an example of something other than a school where you might be called upon that's not open to the public?
Yes, sir. Richmond frequently has festivals. I think there's 2 or 3 a week these days, and some you have to pay to get into. I've been invited to participate in those festivals where I could reach a broad number of citizens with registering to vote, but it's not open to the public. I also have a very limited budget as far as advertising, and advertising in the Richmond Times-Dispatch is not cheap. There have been events that were sponsored in Capitol Square by groups. It was open to the public, but again, my budgetary constraints did not allow me to participate. I get around it by working with these groups and training them to do voter registration, but there's sometimes information that it's difficult to transmit quickly to these groups that I or my staff, if we were there and on site, would be able to more effectively address. This does not in any way, shape, form, or fashion relieve us from the obligation, if we do a voter registration drive, of advertising it and opening it to the public. It just gives us more flexibility to work when we're invited to participate in some function.
Does that answer your question, Senator Deeds? You good?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Any other member of the committee have a question on this bill? Anybody in the audience wish to speak to the bill? Step on up, ma'am.
Is this all right with me? You think so?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, in Fairfax County, we see similar obstacles as Kirk Showalter does in the city of Richmond, specifically with regards to the amount of money that's needed to advertise when we do events, more specifically being the only jurisdiction in the Commonwealth that's required to publish notices, not just in English but in Spanish, and as well as Vietnamese and additionally Korean that we have taken on ourselves. Anytime that notice is put out, we have to put it in those newspapers that circulate in those languages. So removing a little bit of an obstacle and financial obstacle to publish whenever we need to do drives like this is greatly appreciated.
Hi, I'm Diana Dutton, Deputy Registrar in Fauquier County. Everybody has stated the benefits of this, and as a member of the Legislative Committee, we support the bill.
Okay. Thank you. You want to wrap it up, Senator McClellan? Is there anything to wrap up with?
I mean, I think it's just to make clear this applies to events that the registrar is not him or herself sponsoring, but has been invited to as an attendee, or is at a place that is not open to the public, such as a school. So it's very limited.
Gotcha. Okay, with that, the committee operates on motion. Senator Deeds. The motion is to report. Is there a second? Okay, seconded by Senator Howell. The bill is probably for us. Committee will vote.
Ayes 5, noes 7.
Ayes 5, no 7. The bill fails. Okay. Somebody else out? No. Let me remember this. Okay, we're up to committee members. Let me see who we have. Senator Chafin, you want to do your bills? Sure. Senator Chafin, you want to start with 379 first? Ben, you good with that? 379 first? Yes, I'm fine with that, Mr. Chairman.
committee to bring their attention to Senate Bill 379, please.
Okay, so, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, back in 2016, the General Assembly made a change that eliminated part-time registrars from the Appropriations Act. And what this did was it allowed for, of course, full-time general registrars to work on a full-time basis throughout the year. And that's the way it's been since then, and both parties seem to like that. And even though the part-time language was removed from the budget, the code section 24.2-411 still includes the language that could reintroduce part-time registrars. It's still there. The Code Commission has considers removing obsolete language, but they will not do it because this really hasn't been repealed. So they're not considered to be obsolete since it's just language in the budget that controls it. So we have proposed this bill. There's absolutely no fiscal impact on the localities. It's in the budget. They're full-time positions right now, and we think that the code ought to so reflect.
Senator Chafin, I know Senator Edwards is not here, but he has Senate Bill 151 that's identical to your bill. And since you're here in the vehicle, do you have any opposition with me having someone make a motion to roll 151 into your bill and list you and Senator Edwards as chief co-patrons?
I'll make that motion.
And I'll second it. All right, the motion is to take Senate Bill 151, Senator Edwards' bill, roll it into Senate Bill 379. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I guess go ahead and vote, please. I'm not supposed to vote. Jill. Hobie, wipe the board real quick, please. All right, go ahead and put it up. Okay, those bills are now rolled together.
Vogel, do we have her proxy, Senator Vogel's proxy?
Ayes 12, no 0.
I'm just curious, it's not there.
No.
We should leave one.
Okay, so those are together, Senator Chafin. Is there anyone wish questions from the committee? Does Senator Chafin, anybody in the audience wish to speak to the bill?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion to report.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Howell?
I just had a question. I think I heard you say this was a Code Commission recommendation?
No, I did.
I'm sorry.
I don't think Mr. Chairman, I don't think I meant to say that. I indicated that the Code Commission had considered a bill to remove obsolete language from 24.2, and this section was requested to repeal. But from my understanding, Meg Lamb indicated that the section wouldn't be considered obsolete simply because of the Appropriations Act.
Thank you.
Senator Deitch.
I want to vote against this, and I just want to explain it because, in the part of the world I live in, I live in a county with 4,600 people, and we're not growing. The county to the north of me has 2,300 people, and their high point was about 100 years ago when they were at 6,500. They're not going in the growth direction. A full-time registrar is inefficient from my perspective in those most rural localities, and I'm going to vote no.
Okay, with that, the committee will vote.
Ayes 10, noes 2.
Ayes 10, noes 2. That bill is passed. Senator Chafin, you have Senate Bill 834.
Yes, I do, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. This is a data sharing bill that it just simply cleans up the procedure when a voter is identified as being registered in another state. Currently in the code, whenever someone is believed to be registered in another state, the General Registrar sends to the other state a copy of the voter's registrar and their voting history. The Department of Elections is required to request from neighboring states that same voter registration and voting history. Virginia currently participates in voter information data exchanges like the Electronic Registration Information Center, or ERIC, and Interstate Voter Registration Cross-Check Program. So what this bill does, it will do three things. First, when another state, and that would be any state, not just a neighboring state, contacts Virginia about a duplicate voter and requests their information, the general registrar will request the same thing from that state. And second, it'll use data matching exchanges like ERIC and Crosscheck. Virginia already participates in those, but this will codify that. And then third, if someone's registered in multiple states, the registrar will notify the registrar in that locality. So that's what this does. It doesn't remove anybody from the voting polls. It just helps to assist when we have multiple people with multiple registrations.
And just to remind the committee, there was a House bill, I think it was like 23-something last year that we heard that was very similar to this, passed out of here in 9-5, I believe. Does anybody wish to, from the committee, have a question for Senator Chafin? Anybody in the audience like to speak to the bill? Yes, ma'am. Step on up. Dr. Wheeler, I think I saw your hand come up. No? Dr. Wheeler, you want to come up?
I'd like to thank Senator for this bill because it assists the general registrars in having the documentation that they need. The federal law requires that information be transmitted from someone in authority. That would be someone from another state, Department of Elections, general registrar in another state to the Commonwealth. And then the Department of Elections by this bill is required to transmit that information in a timely fashion to the registrars so that the registrars can review their own records. This assists the registrars and gives them data which they would need. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wheeler. Anybody have any questions for Dr. Wheeler? Okay, committee operates by motion. Have a motion to report. It's been properly seconded to pass Senate Bill 834. Committee will vote.
Ayes 7, noes 5.
Ayes 7, noes 5. You are off the dais, Senator Chafin.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Cosgrove?
a housekeeping, and I'm not sure we've done this yet, but if we haven't, I make a motion that Senate Bill 26 and my Senate Bill 820 go by for the day.
I don't believe we have we, Meg? We haven't gotten to that, right? Okay, so without objection, Senate Bill 820 and Senate Bill 26 will be passed by for the day.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Senator Peake.
having voted on the prevailing side on 379, I would like to ask to revote
What bill number?
379, Chafin's prior bill.
Okay. The motion on the committee is to reconsider in which 379 was voted. All those in favor, vote. Okay, the bill is now before us again.
Oh, I'm sorry. You already gave me yours. Okay.
The bill is now before us again. Senator Chafin, you want to? It's been moved and seconded that Senate Bill 379 pass. Clerk, call the roll.
Ayes 8, noes 5.
Ayes 8, noes 5. That bill has passed.
Okay, do we have any non-members in the queue? We do not. Do we want to go back to Senator Edwards' bills? I have my appointees resolutions, but I want to wait for Senator Eben to come back from local government so he can speak to it. Promised him. Yeah.
So for Senate Bill 130
Okay.
is the first one, and it's a code commission technical fix according to, it just repeals and revises several obsolete elections-related statutes. It's a recommendation of the code commission.
I think these are pretty straightforward. Is there anybody who is in the audience who wishes to speak on these Code Commission recommendations? Okay, yeah. Motion's been made and properly seconded to report Senate Bill 130. All in favor. And just to reiterate, these are recommendation of the Code Commission. Please vote aye.
Ayes 13, no 0.
Okay, that one passes unanimously. And then,
152 is the other file I've got, Madam Chair.
okay,
And my information is, Ms. Showalter will speak on this one as well. It clarifies that when determining the number of assistant registrars to serve in the office of general registrar, the electoral board may include any to serve full-time. Currently, Russell County is required to have at least one assistant registrar. Counties and cities exceeding 15,500 in population are required to have at least one part-time assistant registrar, and counties and cities with populations of less than that are required to have at least one substitute registrar. The bill doesn't amend any of those mandates according to my information. You may correct me if I'm wrong, but
You're correct.
okay. Yes, I would love to hear you speak to the bill. Welcome again.
Thank you. Kirk Showalter, General Registrar for the City of Richmond. This is a recommendation of the Registrars, excuse me, my voice is getting froggy, Registrars Association, and it just simply clarifies the electoral board's authority to determine the type, whether it's full-time or part-time of assistant registrars. I believe code generally just says shall determine the assistant registrars. It doesn't say full-time or part-time status. And there's been some question as to whether they could dictate whether it be full-time or part-time status.
Is there any member of the committee who has a question?
I would move to report the bill, Madam Chairman.
Okay. Motion's been made, properly seconded to report Senate Bill 152. All in favor, please vote aye. Okay, Senate Bill 152 passes. Senator Edwards also had Senate Bill 825. What I know that we have a few, what I think we may do is wait for Senator Edwards to be here to deliberate a little more on the bill. But I do know that we had some registrars who were here who might have wanted to speak to this, who will not be here next week. So I know it's also the top priority of the association. So out of deference to our visitors, I thought I might just take it up for a moment and hear some testimony. Would that be okay? And then maybe we'll wait till next week and vote. Senator Sproul?
Madam Chairman, if there's no whole lot of opposition, could we just do it today? I don't know how.
I'm happy to do it today, and I'm sure Senator Edwards would be happy if we passed this bill.
If we all can agree on it, why not?
Okay. Okay, so Senate Bill 825 has to do with the State Board of Elections, the membership, the appointment of the Commissioner of Elections. And what the bill does is it increases the membership of the State Board from 3 members to 5 members, and it increases the term of the board members from 4 years to 5 years. Representation is given to each of the political parties having the highest and next highest number of votes in the Commonwealth at the last preceding gubernatorial election, with 3 board members being of the party of the governor. The terms are initially staggered. The bill also grants the board the authority to appoint and remove the Commissioner of Elections subject to the confirmation by the General Assembly, to head the Department of Elections and to act as the principal administrative officer. The appointment or removal of the commissioner shall require an affirmative vote of 4 of the 5 board members, and it requires the board to submit an annual report to the governor and to the General Assembly. It has a delayed effective date of January 1 of 2019. So, is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak in favor of the bill?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Robin Lind, speaking as president of the Virginia Electoral Board Association, also speaking as secretary of the Goochland County Electoral Board, and as secretary of the GREB work group. This is a recommendation of the GREB work group and has been endorsed by the Virginia Electoral Board Association. There are other members here. I think it's also been endorsed by the Registrars Association, and it addresses what we believe are severe deficits in the current system. And I believe that the vice chair of the state board is here also, who'd be willing to testify about the difficulties she's had dealing with the current system. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that might be from the committee.
Thank you. You've got a line behind you, so we'll hear from them and then maybe take questions from the committee. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm Charlie Judd. I chaired the Board of Elections before the current board when we had 3 members. We still have 3 members. And the awkwardness of that was that 2 of the 3 represent a quorum. So I could never talk to a fellow board member until we brought the gavel down. There was a time when the head of the agency was also a board member, couldn't talk to that head of the agency because that head of the agency was also a board member. And so 3-member boards are not good. For the ability to have discussions outside of the public meeting has a lot of value, and I think an odd number is also important so that you don't have stalemate. I think we've seen enough of that in the last few days. And so a 5-member board made lots of sense. I really get excited about a 5-year term rotating so that each year the General Assembly will be confirming a new member of the state board. That puts that institutional continuity in place. The board that I served on was a 4-year term, concurrent. So every 4 years you start over. And the learning curve, however long it is, maybe 6 months, maybe 9 months, maybe a year, into that term, now you're starting to roll. And I think you lose some valuable insight and institutional knowledge that would be passed on. I like the idea, too, that it's modeled somewhat after the State Corporation Commission, where you have the 5-member board with some autonomy, and they are responsible for hiring the professional chief operating officer of that organization, which that gives the opportunity then for a professional person in the job to do to run the agency. So as a former member of that board, I wholeheartedly support that. I would have looked forward to serving with a 5-member board. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good to see you again.
Welcome. We're back.
It's nice to be back so quickly. Walt Latham, York County Registrar and President of the Registrars Association. This is one of our top priorities, and the reason it's one of our top priorities is, to be perfectly frank, we just don't think it really complies with democratic norms to have the head of the election agency answerable directly to an elected official. We think that there should be a 5-member state board of elections. And I don't mean to call into question the character and integrity of any of the occupants. It's just not the way things should be done in America. You should have some insulation from the political branches so that election administration is done just like we would expect it to be done in other countries, which is somewhat insulated from political pressures and partisan pressures. Right now, the Commissioner of Elections serves at the pleasure of the governor. And that means that the commissioner also does not have to be very responsive to the State Board of Elections. That's not the way you should have it if you're going to have a Department of Elections that's supposed to be helping us do our jobs. If you want to have a uniform regulatory agency, you need to pass this because you do not have that now. You need a 5-member State Board of Elections because if you have 3 members, you have 2 who are the party of the governor and 1 who is the second runner-up or the first runner-up. So if you have the Republican member gone, you have 2 Democrats on the board. If you have one of the Democrats gone, you have a Democratic and Republican member. Again, not to call into question their integrity. It's just if the whole point is to have balance, 3 members is not really working as far as having a working group of people. And you also have them come and go after every 4 years. You wouldn't want that in any other field. You wouldn't want to have a new dentist every year. We don't want to have a new state board or new commissioner every 4 years. We're trying to do a professional operation around here. Can you imagine having to train the state agency dealing with something becoming as technical as elections have been and are becoming and having them replaced every 4 years? If you want to fix that, this is your vehicle to do it. If you do not vote for this, it will not be fixed.
Madam Chair. I did, no question to you, sir. I did say that we would hear what the folks have to say if they have no opposition. And I have got some word that Senator Edwards had wanted this to be passed by for the day. So
He does want it to be passed by?
Yes,
Okay.
so I mean passed by for the week. So I didn't want to vote on it, but still I want to hear what they have to say since they're here. but not to vote on the consent to ever want it to be passed by for the week.
Okay, yeah, that was going to be my earlier suggestion. We carried over and wait till he's here, but let them speak today so you have the benefit of hearing from the folks who came to speak.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think we are all, everyone who has spoken, we are all active participants in the election process. We live it every day. We work with it every day. As the vice chair of the current State Board of Elections, I speak with registrars and/or electoral board members every day. And I've got the cell phone records to prove it and the emails. We are trying to help Virginia have free, fair, and legal elections. However, the current system does not provide that in a working fashion. I would strongly say that it's important for any group to be able to talk to its fellow members. Under the current construct, I can't talk to any other board member except in a meeting because there are 3 of us. And constitutionally, we would constitute a quorum if 2 of us talked. So 3 is not enough. Local boards are also 3-member boards, but we're not addressing local boards with this bill. Having staggered terms, I would go so far as to say is an imperative, because what you've heard is true. When you have a board that turns over every 4 years and everybody comes in new, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, but has no institutional knowledge of what's happened in the previous 4 years unless they've been very active with the board for another reason, it's a detriment to learning and improving on your qualities. The appointment of the commissioner of the Department of Elections was discussed at length when the secretary of the Department of Elections was made just a secretary and not the managing person in the department. I would agree completely with everyone who's spoken that says that the body of the people running elections needs to be separated from any administration, not just a current or past, but any administration, because you want the Department of Election and the State Board of Elections and everyone working in elections to be nonpartisan. When you put on your electoral board hat or your registrar's hat, you take off your partisan hat. You may have the same ideals that you've always had, but you need to be nonpartisan. To that point, I'm going to step a little bit to the side from my colleagues and offer something for you to consider in the interim for this discussion on this bill. And that would be to make the State Board of Elections a 4-person body, because then it truly would be bipartisan. You'd have 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats. They could talk to each other one-on-one, because 2 people would not constitute a quorum and would not violate the open meeting rules. So the Republican and the Democrat could talk, the Democrat and the Democrat could talk, et cetera, and of course could talk to the commissioner. I've discussed this with many people on the bipartisan commission that looks at elections all over the country. They recommend bipartisan boards because then no party controls what happens in the State Board of Elections. If you have a 5-member board, you still have 3 on 2. If you have a 4-member board, you have 2 on 2, which means every motion and every idea must, in order to pass, be bipartisan. You have to persuade one other member to your way of thinking, as opposed to coming in and saying, we're the 3-man team and we don't really care what you think. So I would offer that for your consideration as a means of having a truly bipartisan electoral board. Everything else in this bill I cannot support any more aggressively or fully. Thank you very much.
Okay, is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak in opposition to the bill? I think the support has been fairly unanimous from the working group and from the registrars. I appreciate the registrars being here in support of the bill. I'm sorry Senator Edwards is sick.
Madam Chair, it's my understanding that you're chief co-patron on the bill as well. Is that?
I just checked. I'm actually only a co-patron. not chief co-patron.
Well, Madam Chair, I don't know that there's a lot of opposition from the dais. I'd be inclined to have a motion to actually get it out of here today, to not backlog us even longer. If I can get a second to it,
Madam Chair?
I would
Senator
appreciate
Deeds.
courtesy being extended to Senator Edwards. He's not here. It's not like he's faking. He spent 7 hours in the emergency room.
No one's going to kill it.
Madam
If he
Chairman.
has a concern, I'm happy to send it back to P&E if he objects, or have him do something on the floor.
Madam Chair?
There's no opposition. Yes, Senator Sproul.
Now, I hope you keep your word now. I said earlier to you, if I'm not mistaken, is that he's not here, let the people speak. There's some opposition, they cut over. If there's everybody don't want to call it, fine. And you said yes, so I'm hoping you keep your word like you said. Because you got the vote, so I'm telling you to keep your word to me when I say let them speak. But there's some opposition, we let come back. And I hope you don't break your word to me.
Madam Chairman.
Senator Cosgrove.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. With deference to Senator Sproul, you know, this is Senator Edwards' bill. We don't have a chief co-patron on it. I don't think there's opposition to the bill, but I believe in deference to one of our colleagues, he probably ought to be here to at least vote on his own bill.
Right.
So
I'm happy
yeah,
to carry it over till next week.
I won't make the motion because that's my friend down
Okay,
there,
so
but
we'll carry it over until next week. Meg just did mention that there is opposition in the audience. So even though they didn't speak, out of deference to everybody, we will give Senator Edwards the opportunity to be here next week. And do we have any other bills for Senator Edwards that we could dispose of? They're the ones you have. Okay. All right, so everything else for Senator Edwards will wait until next week. I'm just really trying not to clog up the P&E docket. We have a massive docket and not that much more time and still a lot of bills ahead of us. Okay, so let me just make one quick observation. You all took up Senator McClellan's bill when I was next door presenting my bill. That was Senate Bill 358, and that is virtually identical to Senator Edwards' bill, which is SB 131. Okay. What needs to happen, if we could go back and reconsider, because I do not want to report out anything that is not consistent. So for purposes of clarification, Senator McClellan's bill was a notice and public access not required for certain voter registration events. I'm certain that we heard from the registrars. Senator Edwards' bill was virtually identical. She had an additional exception that his did not. So I would respectfully request that for purposes of economy and not to have Senator Edwards present the same bill and hear all the same testimony again and have an inconsistent position. I mean, we're going to vote the same way. I would like to ask for a motion to reconsider Senator McClellan's SB 358 and then roll together Senator Edwards' bill and then reconsider that vote and move those out together. If that would be okay with the members of the committee.
Madam Chairman, having voting on the prevailing side where we pass Senator McClellan's 358, I would move that we reconsider that bill.
Okay.
We
Having voted
actually-
on the prevailing
actually, I
side by
take it
which
back.
we failed to pass Senate
Failed
Bill
to pass, correct.
358, I would like to ask that please be reconsidered. All in favor, please vote aye. Okay, the bill is properly before us for reconsideration, and I would like to ask for a motion that we roll Senate Bill 358 into Senate Bill 131, Senator Edwards' bill.
So moved.
Madam Chair.
Okay, so the motion has been made to roll Senate Bill 131, which is Senator Edwards' bill, into Senator McClellan's Senate Bill 358. The motion has been made, properly seconded. All in favor,
Madam.
please vote aye. Okay, the bill is properly before us, the substance of which was heard already in Senator McClellan's bill, Senate Bill 358. The motion will be the same motion that you heard before after testimony on the bill, and that motion was to pass? The motion was to report, and that was to report with a substitute. Right, and we've rolled it together, so the motion would now be to report with a substitute. All in favor of reporting Senate Bill 358, please vote aye. And please vote the same. Maybe. Okay, you don't have to. Okay.
6 and 07.
Oh, wait, sorry. Can you strike the vote because I voted incorrectly? Sorry.
Having voted on prevalence by a sign in which the bill failed, asked to reconsider that vote.
Yes, having been made and properly seconded, could we please reconsider the vote? All in favor of reporting the bill, please vote aye. Right, we're going to vote. Sorry. Okay. I apologize for the technicality there, but that will help us dispose of bills quickly.
Ayes 5, noes 8.
Okay. Okay, the next bill before us is Senator Mason.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. This is Senate Bill 556. So in Williamsburg, we've got a small jurisdiction issue in that we've got a registrar. The registrar has to live in the city or county with which they serve. We have our longstanding extraordinary registrar here, Wynn Souter, has served us with distinction for many years. One day we're going to have to let her retire. So we've brought in an assistant who has a great background. She lives down in the Grove section of the area, right in the heart of my district, about a mile away from Busch Gardens, if you know the area. Her and I'm going to make her address up, as 123 Carlton Bivouac, right in the middle of Grove, Williamsburg, Virginia, 23185. My address is 12 Bayberry Lane, Williamsburg, Virginia, 23185. Unfortunately, I live in the city limits of Williamsburg, and she actually lives in James City County, although she has a Williamsburg address. So Williamsburg is a very expensive, small city to live in with only about 13,000 homes. James City County is much larger. So this is an attempt to remedy the problem that we have. I think this bill also has come before the other chamber before from Radford that had the same type of issue. So it's kind of a small locality problem. And so I've asked that someone that lives in or of a county or city adjoining the county or city which they are appointed could serve as the registrar in the area.
Thank you, Senator Mason. Just for the committee's information, House Bill 1473 in 2015 reported out of here, which is identical, 12-0 and 2. So I think probably 2 abstaining, and then passed the Senate 38-0. So.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anybody have any questions for Senator Mason on it?
Yeah,
Senator Pick.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Mr. Mason, Senator Mason, I understand your issue here.
Yes, sir.
But how, I live in a city, big city, but we have 3 counties all around us, right? Everywhere you go, you're going to have a street that's right on the county line, the city line.
Yes, sir.
Is there any limitation in this bill? Have you proposed any population limitation or
Mr. Chairman, Senator Peake, it's a great question, and I don't mean to argue against my own bill, but in the budget, when you pay for registrars, you break it out, population 0 to 25,000, 25 to 50, 50 to 75, 75 to 1. So if you were interested in putting a limitation to just the smaller jurisdictions such as Williamsburg, that would not be the case in Lynchburg and the surrounding counties. I would think, Madam Chairman, Senator Peake, we could put the up 0 to 25,000 population limitation in.
Mr. Chairman?
Senator Peake.
Senator Peake.
And this I might actually direct to Senator Deeds, who spoke earlier about his counties. You have 2,500, 3,500. I'd be interested in hearing his input.
You know, as I see this bill, Madam Chair, Senator Peake, it just gives you the ability to hire somebody from an adjacent county, and if that's what you want to do, you know, I don't have a problem with that.
Madam Chairman.
Senator Cosgrove.
Thank you. A question for the patron. Senator, so if your bill passes and this person becomes a registrar, that registrar can vote in the city in which he's a registrar. Is that correct?
Madam Chairman, Senator Cosgrove? Yes, sir.
That's what I thought. All right.
Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak in favor of the bill? Please come forward. Okay, that's a good sign.
Madam Chair, Cameron
Welcome.
Sansnet, General Registrar, Fairfax County. To Senator Cosgrove's point, currently there exist situations in which that might be true. So any locality which is wholly contained within another locality, such as the city of Fairfax, within Fairfax County, the registrar is not required to live within the city as long as that city is wholly contained within the other surrounding jurisdictions. So the registrar from the city of Fairfax actually is my neighbor in the county of Fairfax. However, I'm currently precluded from living within the city of Fairfax, so I have to live in the county of Fairfax. When localities are looking for top talent to fill these positions as we become more technologically embedded with voting technology and new procedures, it is important for localities and electoral boards to have the ability to look beyond just the current area of the jurisdiction so that they can hire some of the best and brightest, which might be developed within other jurisdictions. Or in my case, I had to move very rapidly into Fairfax County, which is if you ever looked for housing in Fairfax County, it's not the easiest thing to do within a matter of 30 days. So I think this helps electoral boards. It helps ease a little bit of opportunities in some smaller localities such as Falls Church City, which is bordering on other jurisdictions where there might be easier opportunities to bring in good, talented registrars who might not have to be right within that very, very small radius.
Madam Chairman?
Senator Spruill.
Now, to me, Northern Nova, to me, that's another state. Okay, so you're saying, let's take Chesapeake and Norfolk I'm familiar with. So you're saying that Chesapeake, because you have somebody who is bright and smart from another locality, that the register, they can pick a person from another locality in the county to be registered in Chesapeake?
So, Madam Chair, Senator Spruill, with the current laws, it allows for the electoral board to pick anybody of their choosing. Just within 30 days, they have to become a resident of that jurisdiction.
That's right.
However, this would allow for that residency requirement to be eased slightly so that if there are adjoining localities that I can, or any other registrar that's appointed, could find residents in somewhere that may be a little bit more beneficial to either where the location of the registrar's office is. If they're relocating from across the state, they might find those better housing opportunities just slightly in a different area. The responsibilities would still be fully incumbent upon them to run the elections, run the voter registration in the way that's consistent with the law for that locality.
Madam Chairman? Then, so let me clear it up. Let's take in Chesapeake. Chesapeake is divided from Norfolk with Berkeley Avenue. Okay, Berkeley Avenue. So you're saying that because it's adjacent, so you're saying that we can pick someone from Norfolk. It's one street go right down the line. Chesapeake, across the street, is Berkeley Avenue. So for Chesapeake, we could pick someone from Norfolk. They're right adjacent, so we can do that.
Madam Chair, Senator Spruill, there's nothing that precludes the electoral board from choosing anybody who's of himself not even a registered voter of Virginia. It requires that within 30 days that person become a resident. So in terms of the selection process, they very well could choose somebody from right down the street, right across the border in another state, just so long as by the time that they actually assume the office and within 30 days, they are a resident currently of that jurisdiction. So if somebody were chosen from Northern Virginia who had to move down to Chesapeake.
It would never happen.
But if it were the case and the electoral board did a search and they did find a very highly qualified candidate and wanted that person to move in, they would have to, under current law, move into the actual jurisdiction. This would just simply allow that residence to be a little bit easier for that person to find residency. Or if you found somebody from Richmond area or anywhere else in the state, just eases that requirement.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Okay, next in line.
Hi, my name is Wen Souter, and I'm the registrar in the city of Williamsburg. For the past 10 years, I have been renting an apartment in Williamsburg, and my home is in Pocosin, but I love my job, so I'm willing to do that. And my husband is kind enough to understand that. And right now, it's getting to be time for me to retire. And I have a wonderful assistant that my board interviewed and picked because I'm on my way out, and I wanted them to be happy with a registrar that of their choosing, and I also wanted to train that person. So it doesn't make sense to me to let someone pass someone by that would be an excellent registrar just because they don't live in the locality where they want to work. And I think it would be a really good thing if we could understand that there are election professionals, and there are not a whole lot of us, but to choose from the ones that we have that would make good registrars would be a benefit to the state and the Commonwealth, rather than to hire a new person and they have to learn their job as they go along and maybe make a lot of mistakes. So I hope you'll consider the bill and pass it, because it really would be a good thing for a lot of people. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Robin Lynn speaking on behalf of the Goochland County Electoral Board, of which I'm secretary. We have just gone through the process of hiring a new registrar, something that had not been done for 32 years. We have a reputation in the state as having the highest voter turnout of any jurisdiction, county or city. Our people are extremely interested in having a first-rate registrar to help them in the process. But let me give you a hypothetical. If you wanted to hire an extremely qualified candidate who happened to be divorced and had joint custody with her spouse and had children in a school she did not want to remove them from in the middle of the school year, and you asked her to move into your county adjoining, and she then would have to leave her children in their school but turn the address over entirely to her husband, and her husband then might have the legal ability to claim sole custody, you would have a situation where you lose the opportunity to get a qualified candidate because of the disability created by the divorce settlement. And that's just a hypothetical. But we support the bill and the intent to make the system uniform throughout the state, the same way in which a registrar for Charlottesville, entirely surrounded by Albemarle, could live in Albemarle. We think other cities which are surrounded by more than one jurisdiction should have the same uniform ability. Thank you.
Me again, President of the association. Just to give you a personal anecdote, it's not just about Williamsburg. The situation mentioned by Mr. Sasnet with regard to Fairfax City, I encountered personally myself. Shortly after I became registrar, I went to go stay with a friend of mine who had become the registrar of Fairfax City. The place he was living, because it was all he could afford, from what I could recall, is a room in the basement of an IT worker for the city. And that is who Fairfax City was able to find to work as their registrar. So when you have all of the concerns you hear on the news about elections and who's running the elections and who are you getting and are you able to retain them, the quality of life and the type of people who would be attracted to a job where maybe the most they could afford, and obviously if you're with a family that's not workable, is renting a room in someone's basement. I think the state maybe needs to consider that. I mean, the alternative, of course, is to raise our salaries, but other than that, you know, that's just a consideration of why this is the type of relief that registrars need and localities need.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, I'm Andrew Trivet. I'm the Assistant City Manager in the City of Williamsburg. We would urge you to pass the bill. Is
there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak in opposition to the bill? Okay, well, it looks like you
Madam Chair, move the report.
doing pretty well.
Madam Chairman,
Senator Sproul.
remarks before we vote. Make some remarks before we hit the vote. Then if we do that, then how come in our localities is that we require that if you want to be a city manager from a location, we require them to move to that city? How come the schools who are the superintendent from a school, and we trying to get the best qualified person possible, and we look within our city and outside our city. If they're outside our city, and we hire that person, they got to move it in the city. I think I would be a good candidate to be on the Board of Supervisors in North Virginia. I don't like North Virginia because it's a different state, but I would be a good candidate from North Virginia to let them know how we do it down south, as I call Virginia. We are down south, and I would be a good candidate from North Virginia to let the Northerners know that y'all are different from us. So if I decided to do that and run and win, I got to move. I got to leave Virginia and move to the other Virginia, North Virginia. So I'm trying to figure out. Then you use the example about living in a room. If you know that you can't afford to move, then you can't get that job.
Right.
You can't get it. I mean, if you're poor, live in one room, you can't get that job. So I can't see using the excuse behind the best candidate. Then do it for everything. Do it for everything. So I think if you wanted that job, you have to live in that city.
Was that a second to the motion, Senator Sproul? Madam Chairman, Senator Sproul, I'd like to remind you my area code is 757, which is down. But you know, superintendents, city managers make $100,000 to $150,000. The stated number in the budget for Williamsburg Registrar is $46,000 a year.
Madam Chairman?
Okay. Yes, Senator Dance.
Madam Chairman, I love my colleague that's standing in front of me, but I too have a serious problem with a person of this caliber, of this position, not being a part of the community that is supporting them in something as important to this. It's more than just a job. It is knowing their community. It is knowing the people. When you talk about you want to make sure that there is legitimacy or whatever, that person has a good pulse if they've been there long enough to know whether or not this is a character, whether or not there is inconsistency in this person coming and asking and doing for this, that, and the other. There are just some hot buttons. There is just some rise to the top instinctiveness of the person that's doing this job. There are skills, knowledge, and abilities for all the jobs out there. Madam Chair, we make a big salary of $18,000. I think we're qualified to do these jobs, and you all, some might not. But I think we give it the best we've got, and we are required to live in the district that we represent. We can't live in another district, no matter how good we are, or think we are. We must live in the district that we represent.
Madam
I
Chairman.
love my colleague.
The motion's been made.
Madam Chairman, I've been waiting to speak. It's been lit for a
Oh,
while.
I'm so sorry. Senator Cosgrove.
Thank you. Madam Chairman, with all due respect to Senator Mason, I hate this bill, okay? We have people that, if you want to be a registrar in a locality, then live there. And I'll tell you, I just think it's a terrible idea to start picking and choosing, oh, well, it's just across the line. Well, it's just the next county over. Well, they only live 50 miles away. Senator Dance is exactly right. We need somebody who has real-time experience living in the locality in which they're going to be the registrar. They're going to be dealing with the voting population. Madam Chairman, I just think that the bill, while well-intended, has a lot of consequences that I think are not good for Virginia.
Okay.
And
Senator
I don't think
Chase.
the realtors like it either.
Senator Chase.
The realtors. I bet I can get them to stand up and support it.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question, if I could, for Clarabelle Wheeler, who's our first vice chair, if I could put her on the spot for a minute. Do you support this measure, or do you oppose it?
Well, since I've gone against my election colleagues once today, and I'm sure, I'll hear about it. I have very mixed feelings about this bill. I know the registrar in Williamsburg, and she is as good as you get. She is an absolutely superb registrar, and she works very hard. And she clearly has taken it upon herself to rent an apartment, so she qualifies for the job. I also agree that you should be the registrar for the people where you work, because as Senator Dance said, you know the community. And I don't know how you say, is it just across the street? Is it the other side of the county? Is it 50 miles away? I like community. And so I apologize, guys. I really think you ought to live in the community that you're serving, whether you're the city manager or a member of the Board of Supervisors or a registrar.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Or
Congress. Madam Chairman, we've heard a lot of support for raising the salary of the registrar
have.
here in the last few minutes. So we'll
Yes, we have.
we'll look forward
Yay.
to coming back to all you folks and getting your full-throated support in the future.
I would just say,
Pay them a
Senator,
living wage.
Senator Mason, I commend you for bringing the bill, because I do think that our registrars are in a unique position, different than many of the other people that we have discussed, different than superintendents and different than others. They are election professionals, and they have a very narrow and very unique skill set. And there is a hardship placed on them, and there's a hardship placed on communities who are trying to find competent, qualified, committed, dedicated registrars. And I think we place a hardship on them when we find competent, qualified people, and they do have to do things like, rent an apartment. So I appreciate that, we had almost unanimous support for this from the stakeholders, and I understand and respect the positions of those who have expressed an alternative view, but I do appreciate your bill, and I have a great deal of deference to our registrars who are pleading for some assistance here when they're not getting it in the other ways that they deserve it, in terms of resources and support staff and the like. So,
Madam Chair.
anyway, I appreciate that.
Move,
Yes.
Move to
Senator-
PBI.
Okay.
Madam Chair.
That's a substitute
question.
motion. Yes, we had an earlier motion. The substitute motion, yes, Senator Chase.
Would the patron be open to a substitute that would include basically a provision that if you could not find a registrar in your county within a certain period of time, that you could go outside?
You can't accept that now. You have a motion PBI that supersedes what she's talking about doing.
Right.
We also had a motion to pass the bill earlier.
Yes, we had a
I
motion
made a
that
substitute
was properly
motion.
before us to pass the bill.
Substitute motion to PBI.
Yeah.
All right.
Senator Deeds has moved to adjourn, sine die.
Second.
I'm inclined to second that motion.
Yeah.
We might be here till Christmas.
I thought I was slipping over here quickly,
Yeah.
Madam Chairman.
We started with unanimous support. You're
I
slipping.
remember
We
that.
should have taken that early motion.
No,
Okay, so we have a motion.
motion to PBI.
Second.
We have a motion to PBI that's been properly made and seconded. All in favor of passing the bill by indefinitely, please vote aye.
Ayes 4, noes 9.
Okay. All right, we're back to the primary motion, which is to pass the bill. That motion was made and has been properly seconded. All in favor of passing Senate Bill 556, please vote aye.
Ayes 8, noes 5.
Okay, your bill passes.
Thank you, ma'am.
Well done.
Thank you, members of the committee.
Okay, so we have some other committee members out of deference to Senator Cosgrove, who wanted to be here on one of the appointments resolutions. I'm going to take up the appointments resolutions very quickly, because I think those can be disposed of rather quickly. I was waiting for Senator Eben to come back and for Cosgrove to be here. They are my appointments resolutions.
Madam Chair.
I am carrying, yes.
What did we just do?
Going back, what we did was the motion failed to pass the bill by indefinitely, Senator Mason's bill.
Okay.
So then we took the primary motion, we defaulted back to the primary motion, which was to pass the bill, and the bill passed.
And did I vote no? Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're square. Yes. Senator Cosgrove, we're going to take up the resolution. Yes, Senate Joint Resolution 77. We're going to take that one up first. These are the appointments resolutions that I am carrying on behalf of Governor McAuliffe. These are resolutions that he introduced as he was leaving. And these are the resolutions that I'm carrying. So we're going to take Senate Joint Resolution 77 first. Meg, we have amendments for the others. You don't have the amendment, Meg, in front of you for this one, but this is an amendment that Senator Cosgrove would like to offer. So I'm going to recognize Senator Cosgrove. You want me to give it to you? I got it right here.
It's not showing up.
Madam Chairman, on line 192, I'd like, it's under the Motor Vehicle Dealer Board. It's on page 4 of Senate Joint Resolution 77. I would like to strike all of lines 192 through 194.
Sorry, I apologize, Meg. You do have that one. I thought you had you also have a different one, correct?
That's a different.
Oh, sorry.
That's a
Okay,
different
sorry.
resolution. Okay.
Okay, sorry.
No problem.
Sorry, members of the committee. Senator Cosgrove is so diligent. He had a different amendment that he was offering as a courtesy to a person who was appointed who wishes not to be, but we're going to get to that one in a minute. So I direct your attention to Senate Joint Resolution number 77. Meg, should I distribute the amendment?
Madam Chair, it just has line numbers on it, so it might not
Okay.
be much use
So
to the
it's
members.
on line 192, strike all of lines 192 through 194. That is the Motor Vehicle Dealer Board. And just by way of background, we have all of the appointments before us and all of these resolutions. I had submitted these to everybody for review out of an abundance of deference to the outgoing governor, and because of an effort to get these out into the floor, it was not my wish to hold up any of these appointments over one or two. So what we have before you are resolutions, and I believe we have 4 line amendments. Those amendments have removed whatever the challenge or the concern was, and then the rest of them are going to move. They're going to move to the floor, and our hope is that we'll be able to move all the appointments, save the 1 or 2 that people had concerns about, or in the case of Senator Cosgrove, somebody who wished to be removed. So Senator Reeves, you moved, and Senator Cosgrove, you moved, Senator Reeves, you seconded that line amendment.
Madam Chair?
All in favor, and Senator
May I
Eben, you wanted to
the
speak to that?
amendment?
Yes.
Yeah, on lines 192 to 194 on page 4 regarding the Motor Vehicle Dealer Board. I spoke with a nominee this morning because I had heard something might be amiss about this one. And the nominee has worked for an auto dealer in Virginia for more than 5 years, or I should say for 5 years for a dealer, 3 of them as a licensed Virginia dealer operator, helped open stores in Northern Virginia and Richmond, and he's moved up the ranks from assistant manager to store manager and so forth. He would be one of 19 members of the board, diversifying the board a bit, but I asked him a little bit. He's not a political appointee. He's never made a political contribution. He doesn't donate to campaigns, including recent elections or past ones. And the state code specifies that members of the Motor Vehicle Dealer Board shall be at-large members and, insofar as practical, should reflect fair and equitable statewide representation. But perhaps one of the most important points for the committee to know about is I've been told that to find people to join this board is like pulling teeth, because most car dealers and their employees are extremely hardworking people, and they've had a hard time filling all 19 spots. So I'm not going to speak against your motion per se, but I did want to let the members of the committee know that this person, and best my research could show, is a person of high integrity who makes a positive contribution. In fact, he's already been through one of the meetings on the board and has contributed in a number of ways. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. I'm not going to vote against the motion, but I did want to bring that forward.
Okay. Thank you, Senator Eben. Okay, so the motion's made, properly made and seconded. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay?
I move to report as amended, Madam
All right,
Chair.
so the amended resolution, SJ 77, is before us. All in favor of the appointments resolution, please vote aye. Oh, sorry, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, so that passes. The next one is Senate Joint Resolution. I'm going to take it up, Senate Joint Resolution number 44. Let me just confirm. This one also has a line amendment, line 302, strike all of lines 302 through 304.
Is this resolution 44?
Yes. Senate Joint Resolution 44, I'm sorry, 44.
44. I don't see that.
I'll give you a minute to refer to line 302. And that one is just for purposes of clarification, to give you some little assistance so you don't have to dig through this. That's a member of the library board. No, that's not one that didn't want to serve. That's a different one. This is one that somebody raised an issue about. And again, I'm not interested in holding up all of the appointments over one or two. And then also on line 380, all of lines 380 and 381.
I'm real late.
Madam Chair, I'd make that motion.
Okay. So the motion's been made and properly seconded. Yeah.
Madam Chair,
Senator Eben.
just to speak to lines 380 and 81, I just want the committee to be aware of what we're doing. The nominee there is a 26-year naval commander, a small business person of the year from the U.S. Small Business Administration, serves on the U.S. Chambers Council of Small Business, served on numerous gubernatorial boards and commissions before without controversy, graduate of the U.S. Naval Academy. So that's the kind of person we're removing. Again, I'm not going to try and hold up the whole resolution, but I did want to make members of the committee aware of that.
Okay. Thank you, Senator Eben. And just for purposes of clarification, these are appointments that I am carrying on behalf of the outgoing governor. The current governor has as his authority the opportunity to fill these positions in the interim. So again, focused on trying to move these resolutions. I'm hoping that we'll be able to pass them all without objections based on these amendments. Okay, so the motion is before us to adopt the amendments. It's been made, properly seconded, to adopt the two amendments to Senate Joint Resolution 44. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, the ayes have it, so the resolution is properly before us. All in favor of the appointments resolution, Senate Joint Resolution 44, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, now he's saying we can vote.
All right.
Please vote aye. Thank you.
Ayes 13, no zero.
Okay, the next one is Senate Joint Resolution
Can we do 43, Madam Chairman?
43.
Thank you.
Yes.
Madam Chairman, I'd offer an amendment on this bill. On line 270, having spoken to the person that's in the resolution, they have been appointed to a position within the administration, the current administration, and he feels it would probably be best to have to be left out of this resolution. So
Okay.
I would move to strike lines 270 through 271.
Okay, the motion's been made to strike lines 270 and 271, and for purposes of explanation, this is somebody who was recently appointed by the administration, and Senator Cosgrove spoke to him, and he said that, yes, because of his new position with Governor Northam, he felt it would be appropriate to remove himself from this position, and so it'll be the purview of the governor to fill this position. So with that, the motion's been made and properly seconded to amend the resolution accordingly. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, the motion's, okay. The motion passes, so all in favor of adopting Senate Joint Resolution 43 as amended, please vote aye.
Ayes 13, no zero.
Okay, and the resolution passes. The next resolution before us is Senate Joint Resolution, which is the next one we should take up, Meg? 45. We already do 45. Yeah. Senate Joint Resolution 45. There are no amendments to this resolution. So with that, I would entertain a motion. Yeah, the motion's been made and properly seconded to adopt the governor's appointments resolution as presented before you. All in favor, please vote aye. Opposed, same sign.
Ayes 13, no zero.
The resolution passes unanimously. Okay. Pardon. Okay, and the next resolution is Senate Joint Resolution 46. There have been no requested line amendments to that resolution, so I would entertain a motion. The motion's been made and properly seconded to pass the governor's appointments as presented. All in favor, please vote aye.
Ayes
Resolutions.
13, no zero.
Resolutions pass. And the last one before us is Senate Joint Resolution 71. We have an amendment to Senate Joint Resolution 71. It is a technical amendment, actually. It is on line 235. It is to strike the word chair and insert instead the word member. It is, in fact, the case that this committee elects their own chair. So that was the amendment. And with that, the motion has been made and properly seconded to amend line 235, striking the word chair and inserting the word member. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, so the amended resolution is properly before us. All in favor of reporting amended resolution? Okay, so you can't get it on the board, so it will be a voice vote. All in favor of passing the amended Senate Joint Resolution 71, please vote aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, so it appears all ayes. Okay, thank you, everybody, for your patience on the appointments resolutions. Okay, next we have, yeah, we're down to members. Senator Chase. We took care of some of yours while you were in local government.
I love it when that happens. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Okay, Senate Bill 710 is a bill I'd like to strike.
Okay, the motion's been made and properly seconded to strike Senate Bill 710. All in favor, please vote aye. Okay, the bill is stricken.
And just by reason of explanation, that was passed last year. A bill similar, in case people are curious. Senate Bill 712, which has to do with the electors for president, vice president, allocation by congressional district. This bill would change the way Virginia determines the allocation of its electoral college votes and races for president and vice president in a way that is more representative of the will of the people, those voting in presidential elections. Currently, the candidates for president and vice president receiving the highest number of votes receives all 13 of the Commonwealth's electoral votes. Approximately half of all Virginians feel like their voices aren't heard each presidential election. Unless you live in a larger population center like Northern Virginia or Virginia Beach, it's easy to wonder if your vote counts sometimes. Why? Because we are a winner-takes-all state. But seldom does the winner of all our electoral college votes win much more than half of the votes in Virginia. This bill will ensure that the voices of all Virginians are properly heard. This bill has been introduced or supported by both Republicans and Democrats. In fact, I've got Senator Reeves supported this, Senator Garrett, Cosgrove, Carrico, Stanley, Ruff, Chafin, as well as 3 Senate Democrats, Howell, Whipple, and Tiller. And I won't go into the 8 House Republicans or 10 House Democrats that supported this bill last year, right? This revises the process by which the Commonwealth's electoral votes are allocated among the slates of presidential electors so that it's more representative. So under this bill, the winner wins 1 electoral college vote for each congressional district they win based on the popular vote of that particular congressional district. That makes up 11 of the 13 electoral votes. The remaining 2 of the electoral votes goes to the winner. So 11 plus 2 is 13. You see that. This method is currently used in Maine and Nebraska. In my opinion, this winner take all president is not representative of the desires of Virginians. And I'm just going to cut to the chase and say, please support this bill.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Senator Sproul.
bless her heart, no way. Let me tell you why. Because in that case, then, all you have to say, well, Democrats, all you can win is that other state, North Virginia. You can win Tidewater, which will be Norfolk and Portsmouth and Chesapeake sometimes. And you can win Richmond. So we can get 3. In the rest of the state, South Side, Democrats never win South Side. So they would never have an elector get a vote out of South Side as far as an electoral vote out of 11. So that's the case, and being possible, you will win the state, but you will not get the majority of the votes because we win, because we know you win Hampton Roads, Richmond, and North Virginia, we win. So some of us don't even spend a dime of going out of South Side because you're not going to win it. It's too Republican. So in this case, if you do that, then no, we're not getting the majority of those electoral votes you're talking about based on that. So in that case, then you say, let's give them North Virginia, Hampton Roads, and Richmond, and they get all the rest to the Republicans. No, ma'am. Can't support that.
Okay, is there anybody in the audience? Oh, Senator Evan.
Madam Chair, I just had a question too for the patron and maybe a statement. I wanted to ask Senator Chase if she supports the National Popular Vote Program, which gets rid of the electoral vote nationally.
I appreciate the question. I do not support that program.
Okay, because that.
Senator Evan.
Okay, thank you. Because in my opinion, that would give everyone an equal voice, one man, one vote, or one woman, one vote, one person, one vote, I should say. And I also wanted to ask Senator Chase, what if you're in a heavily slanted district? If I lived in a district that's Republican, perhaps a rural district that trends more Republican, and I'm a Democrat, how do I feel like my voice is counted there? Or if I'm a Republican in a heavily Democratic district, as Senator Sproul was trying to point out or did point out, how would my voice count? How would I be have a competitive voice?
I appreciate the question, Senator Evan, and the answer to that question is because we have 13 electoral college votes, it will always be split, typically 7-6, quite honestly, either way. You will always have assuming all, and we've always in Virginia, if you look at the history over all of the congressional districts, they have never all gone towards one particular party. It's always split. Therefore, the Electoral College will reflect that so that you will always have a split when you're looking at the Electoral College votes. It will always be some variation adding up to 13. But it will never be, right now the current system is winner take all. So if you're the loser, you feel like, why'd I vote, right? Because you didn't get any electoral college votes. Whereas if you split it, well, then you at least feel like you have a voice and that you have at least 1 or 2 electoral college votes based on the history of Virginia and how they've always reported the history of Virginia. That is not the current system.
And just a final
Senator
point, Madam
Evan.
Chair, I don't want to belabor this much, but I did want to say that I think Virginia would become irrelevant if we already had the pre-programmed gerrymandered result known that it's just going to be 7-6 anyway. I remember when former Governor Romney was running against Barack Obama, they both spent a lot of time in Virginia. And there's been other times, whether it was President Trump spending time or Vice President Pence spending time in some parts of Virginia, that Virginia is not, there's cycles where at times competitive, sometimes less. But if you knew you were going to get 7-6 or whatever it is because of gerrymandering, why come here at all? Why would Virginia make a difference? We'd become less relevant. So for those reasons and the fact that we don't have this nationally, I can't support the bill. I think there should just be a national popular vote that everyone's voice in the country is equal.
Madam Chair, can I reply to that?
Senator Chase.
What I would say to you is if you look, I have a sheet here that has every single state and how many electoral college votes they get. And I would tell you 3/4 of the states have less than Virginia, less than 13 electoral college votes. And in fact, 5 to 10 states have 6 or less. So, I've got a sheet here. I wish we could project it up there and you can see that. But even if it were split, they're still going to come to Virginia. Because even if you were to divide it, and let's say we only had 7 electoral college votes, more than half of these states, including Iowa only has 6 electoral college votes. So does Colorado, so does Nevada. There's about 15 other states that have 7 or less electoral college votes. So they're still going to come see us. But this is more representative. If you want to talk about transparency, accountability, if you want to talk about people having a representative form of government, then let's split the votes out. It's going to change the proportion based on who wins the congressional district by popular vote. But if you go to a pure popular vote, you are not taking into account the rural areas, and that's not the way the system was set up. So I think this is more representative. It's more weighted. Thank you.
Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak in favor of Senate Bill 712? Is there anybody who wishes to speak in opposition to Senate Bill 712? Okay, the committee operates on.
Madam Chair, may I ask the senator a question?
Yes, Senator Sproul.
Then, my friend, explain to me then, forget about the presidential election, but let's look at the 11, we have 11 congressional districts now. Then explain to me then, how come you always have no more? You got 2 Democrats in North Virginia. You got Barbara Scott in Hampton Roads, and you got Don McKeechin in Richmond, Petersburg. Always. So if we do it your way, we know that even if the person wins the state, we will never get no more than 4 electoral votes. He wins the state. You never get more than 4. So how is that fair if you win the state and we know you're not going to get but 4 because we're going to win North Virginia, Richmond, Petersburg, Hampton Roads. We're going to get 4 out of 11 every time, and I won the state, but I can't get but 4 because the congressional districts are made up heavily in the other areas except those 4 areas. So I won the state as a candidate, but I know I can't get no more than 4 votes because Hampton Roads, Richmond, North Virginia. Is that fair?
Well, what I would tell you is that the 2 addition, as you mentioned, there are 13 congressional districts, 11 congressional districts. So the 2 extra electoral college votes go to the person that wins the state at large. So there's whoever wins at large, they still get the winner. They still get the winner of the 2 electoral college votes. But I would also tell you, living in Chesapeake, and you and I in Chesterfield, I feel like our votes aren't heard because Northern Virginia, I mean, we always wait on election night for what county to come in, Fairfax County. They determine who wins.
Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. That's one time I liked North Virginia.
Senator Deeds.
Between 1952 and 2008, Virginia's electoral votes went to the Democratic candidate once. This issue never arose in this Commonwealth until 2008, when Barack Obama got the electoral votes. We're not changing any minds with this discussion.
Let's move on.
I'm going to move to PBI.
Okay, motion's been made to PBI. It's been properly seconded. All in favor of passing by indefinitely Senate Bill 712, please vote.
Ayes 9, noes 4.
Okay, the bill is passed by indefinitely. Okay, Senator Chase, do you have any other bills before the committee?
We already covered Senate Bill 720. Was that rolled in at the form of ballot party identification of candidates?
Yes, that was rolled into 144.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Senator Reeves.
Madam Chair, I have Senate Bill 474.
Everybody direct your attention to Senate Bill 474.
Madam Chair, 474 came as a result that, from my registrars, that there's a challenge when it comes down to, and I think in some of the larger jurisdictions, that on election day, they have to put all these employees on the actual books and do a bunch of paperwork, making every officer of election full-time employees just to turn around and have to go through the process of taking them off once the election's over. And this was a way to allow them to put them on as contractual employees so they wouldn't have to do all that extra paperwork to bring everybody on and then let them all go. So that's why I brought the bill. It's a very simple bill. And so that's all I got.
Okay. Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak in favor of the bill? Is there anybody who wishes to speak in opposition to this very simple clarification bill? Okay. Committee operates on a motion.
I'll make the motion to pass my bill.
Okay.
I
Motion's
second the
been-
motion passes bill.
Been made and properly seconded to pass Senate Bill 474, which is pretty simple and clarifies that you can employ officers of election on a contract basis. All in favor, please vote aye. Okay, the bill passes.
Ayes 12, no zero.
Okay. Senator, anybody, Senator Sproul,
Yes, ma'am.
you have Senate Bill 26. Would you like to present that one?
We, 20.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I go back for the?
That's been rolled over. Senator Cosgrove, rolled over his bill.
Senator Sproul, what you had was Senate Bill 26, and this was the method of nominating party candidates. It
Yes,
had to
ma'am.
deal with incumbents determining the method.
Yes, ma'am. I thought Senator Cosgrove made a motion to roll it over. Because there's a conflict in court on this bill, so
Yes.
it was passed by. So
Okay.
it was passed by for the day, I think. it
Okay,
was.
because I was just going to make that
Yes, ma'am.
distinction that there was a federal court decision. But
Yes,
okay,
ma'am.
we'll,
Yes,
we'll
ma'am.
carry it over. Okay, that's fine. What is left on the calendar? Okay, Senator, I'm just going to hit Senate Bill 820, which was Senator Cosgrove's. We're going to carry that one by just to, as a matter of clicking through some of these. Senate Bill 820, we're going to pass that by for the day and hold it till next week when we're going to take up some similar bills. And then that brings me to Senate Bill 7, which is Senator Eben.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senate Bill 7 came to me at the request of one of my local registrars. They pointed out that if a Commonwealth's attorney needs to investigate a campaign finance violation, it would be useful for them to have the account number of the campaign bank account. And it would say that the information would be not available for public inspection, but it would be available on the form. So presumably a Commonwealth's attorney or others could see it who were appropriate to see it. Pretty simple bill. Operative language is on lines 34 to 36. I don't know if
Okay,
anyone
I
wants
think
to
the only
speak.
concern that was expressed to me, you have addressed, and that was that it would not be made public.
Yeah.
Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak in favor of the bill? Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak in opposition to the bill?
Madam Chair,
Is there any, Senator Sproul?
I wouldn't want the common fraternity in Chesapeake to see it because, I mean, depending on who the common fraternity is, as far as me, now, I mean, anybody fine, I'd rather give it to an open public, but
Well,
certain people, I wouldn't want to see it.
Yeah, it
because
would be going to the Department of Elections, and presumably the Commonwealth's attorney wouldn't see it unless they were opening up an investigation already. So it would not, as a matter of fact, go to them, but it would be available to them if there was an investigation. I don't know if that's called a criminal investigation, but it would be potential help them with any investigation that they found valid.
Madam Chairman?
Yes, Senator Sproul.
Well, my question is this, for example, where we live, on both sides, so the common fraternity gets heavily involved in working against me because they're Republican, and they should. On our side, the exact same thing. So if a Democrat who's a common fraternity works heavily to get you defeated, then this case come up, then that same common fraternity gonna look at your books, or vice versa. So because their involvement in working for their party, which they should do, I have no problem with that, because their involvement, that same person who, as a Democrat, common fraternity, is working heavily against Republicans to defeat them for their party, then they can turn right around and use this. That's my, if someone else, fine, but someone who is a political figure on either side, to have my information, who's trying to defeat me, or I am trying to defeat them, to have that. That's my only concerns.
Madam Chair.
Senator Reeves.
Having been a police officer, I don't think anything prevents the common, and I'm asking probably Senator Deeds or yourself as attorneys, prevents a Commonwealth or Assistant Commonwealth Attorney from subpoenaing that information should they decide to have enough probable cause. Wouldn't that be correct?
So it's the case currently, and I'm aware of some investigations of election fraud where the Commonwealth's attorney has been able to, with the state police, subpoena whatever records they needed that were bank records. So it's certainly the case that they have the ability to do that, but I'm guessing that your Commonwealth attorney or whoever made the request was just simply doing so because they thought it would be a simpler process if that information were more readily available through the registrar.
Yeah, the request actually came from our registrar, and Senator, I would just tell Senator Spruill that these Commonwealth attorneys, whatever their politics, have taken a sworn oath to uphold the Constitution of Virginia. And okay, well, you know, whatever. I'm hoping they have some integrity, but even if they don't, they can still investigate you. This just makes it does make it a little easier for them to get a bank account number, but they could start that type of investigation anyway.
Madam Chairman?
Yes, Senator
Wouldn't it
Spruill.
be helpful that if you know that a Commonwealth attorney, let's say in my city, for example, wouldn't it be helpful if saying, well, because I'm politically inclined to campaign against this person, then that anybody, then that Commonwealth attorney say, well, the Commonwealth attorney, then we would refer to another Commonwealth attorney to come in. Then I feel better that way because then I know it's not that person. The same thing can happen what you want because another Commonwealth attorney come in and fill in because I've been politically inactive for or against that person. So we will have an outside entity come in and let them get my records.
Yeah, there's been cases of that where Commonwealth's attorneys have said, I don't know if it's not called conflict of interest, but they've referred a case to another Commonwealth's attorney. This would not prevent it.
That I like.
And they're not gonna send, but that's not this part of the code. But they're not gonna just send over your bank records willy-nilly. It would be if there's an investigation, then it would be available.
Yes, sir.
If there's an investigation.
Okay. I've asked, nobody in the audience wishes to speak on this bill. Is there any further discussion from the committee?
Madam Chair, I just have a statement.
Yes.
I don't know if anybody else on this dais has had their identity taken, but I do know that we've had campaign funds taken from members' accounts, and I'm very protective of my bank accounts and where I leave numbers laying around. And I'm not saying that the registrar's office isn't a safe place to keep data. Obviously, they keep very important data there, but I'm reluctant to vote for something that's going to potentially put my accounts at risk for disclosure to someone or left out laying on a table or something for fraud. So for that reason and that reason alone, I'm going to vote no.
Okay. Is there a motion?
If I could address that, Madam
Yeah.
Chair.
Senator Evan.
Just for Senator Reeves, right now the Electoral Board has your Social Security number. I don't know if you have to give that when you register, but they have the Social Security numbers of most registrants. And again, this would be redacted from public view.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Senator Peake.
I'll move to PBI.
Okay, the motion's been made and properly.
Substitute motion?
Yes, substitute motion.
Motion to report.
Motion's been made to report and properly seconded. All in favor of reporting Senate Bill 7, please vote aye.
Ayes 4, noes 9.
Okay, bill fails to report.
I hope I have better luck on these remaining.
I'm sorry. Oh, sorry. I apologize.
Oh,
We
to
now have
PBI.
to vote. So the primary, we're back to the primary motion, which is to report Senate Bill 7. I'm sorry, PBI, Senate Bill 7. All in favor of passing Senate Bill 7 by indefinitely, please vote aye.
Ayes 9, noes 4.
Okay, the bill's passed by indefinitely. Okay, next bill, Senator Evan.
We've got two more chances for me to have some success. The first has to do with the Election Day Page Program, which is Senate Bill 589. Right now, we have a program for high school students to be pages and volunteer for certain duties that they're restricted on Election Day. And we've had a request from one of my registrars to make it clear that other community members could participate if they don't want to serve as an election officer. And there are, these are people who don't want to commit to serving as an election officer, yet they wanted to still help. And I was told it would ease the administrative burden if the county had legal authority to treat adult volunteers as pages. The one thing that I think is a change in the duties for both the adults and the students is right now under the policy, under the current code, they are allowed to handle and count unmarked ballots before the polls open. This is just to make sure that there are not, that we have a good count on how many ballots have not been voted, that they don't kind of walk away or whatever. And this would allow them to handle them not just before the polls close, but later to verify. And of course, if there's a discrepancy, I would assume that the election officers themselves would double count, double check. I don't know if there's any.
Sorry, this is similar to a bill that we passed in the past that you introduced, and that was to allow high school students.
Actually, Senator Black passed it, and I co-sponsored.
That's right. You and Senator Black were co-patrons. And that was a good bill, and I think very helpful. And I believe that I think most people on this committee, I won't speak for them, but would feel the same way. I don't know if there are any members of the committee who have questions, or if there's any member of the audience who wishes to speak in favor of the bill. Anybody who wishes to speak in opposition to the bill?
Yeah, a second.
Okay, there's been a motion. Okay, go ahead. She wishes to speak.
Claire Wheeler, I have been an election officer, and I've recruited election officers, and I am fully supportive of your bill for pages as teenagers. They're wonderful. It gives them an introduction to elections. It provides a place for them to be of service. However, in a busy precinct, having an adult who is a page is going to confuse the voters, or has the potential to confuse the voters. If a voter comes in and they see an adult, even though that adult has a little button that says page, they're not going to know that that's not an officer of election. And people have a tendency to be enthusiastic on election day. We all want to be helpful. If the adult page somehow is confused as an election officer, might they also want to help the voter and help the voters with their balloting, which pages can't do, election officers can't do. Adult pages would not come for election officer training. They might not be able to separate themselves from being the duties of a page, and I think it would be very confusing for the voters that they might see these adult pages as being election officers. I've had this discussion with someone else from another locality, electoral board member, who is not here today, but concurs with this. It also will dilute the pool of people who might want to be election officers. People who are pages can serve in other ways. They can work outside the polls. They can be poll watchers. But I think it might confuse the voters, and so I would be not in favor of this bill. Well, I strongly support the teenagers.
Is there anybody in the audience who wants to speak to that? I know we have some highly qualified and competent officers of election who are election professionals, maybe registrars even.
Madam Chair, Cameron Sasnet, Fairfax County. Well, I fully support the senator's efforts to expand the opportunities for people to serve in the election. There already exists provision in current law that allows for officers' election to serve without pay. And so if they so choose not to accept a payment, they are allowed to. We do not have to pay them if they choose that option. If somebody were to come and met all the other qualifications such as age and citizenship to be an election officer, we could assign them to a precinct, and if they had maybe some disabilities or limitations as to their capabilities, we can accommodate those, which we normally do. So I do apologize if that might put the senator in a position where he has one shot left, but
I got another one after this. We still have a piece of this bill.
So I have a question, because I understand what Senator Eben is trying to accomplish, but to your point, you feel like you already have the ability to have the support that you need from adults who could come in and participate.
Yes, ma'am. Anybody who is qualified, it might be of age, is not a high school student, and we can put them to work in a polling place without any restrictions. If they so chose not to receive a payment, that is completely up to them. And then we would work with whatever there might be limitations with their abilities to get them placed so that they can actually work with that team in each of the polling places.
Okay.
So, yes.
All right, thank you for that. All right, the committee operates, oh, Senator Eben.
Just to close this out, I did want to just clarify something that Ms. Wheeler said. First off, we talked about, I think she talked about training. They're required to be trained on the duties, responsibilities, and prohibited contact. They're also required to take and sign an oath as to serving under the direct supervision of a chief officer of election and observe strict impartiality at all times. I would hope that an adult who's taking an oath would be, I would trust an adult more than a teenager who signs an oath and has a training. Now, further, if the committee wants to not adopt the bill, I hope you will, but if you don't, on lines 130 to 132, it says that election pages may, under the direct supervision of the chief officer of election, assist in the counting of unmarked ballots, unmarked, but shall not handle or touch ballots in any other circumstance. So I don't know what the will of the committee is, but if you don't adopt the larger bill, I hope that perhaps the council could incorporate lines 130 to 132. And I'm assuming that these unpaid election officials are allowed to work for any period of hours already? Is that what I don't know if the council says?
I'm not aware of any restrictions on a person who's an officer of election but not being paid. Maybe a registrar could speak to that.
Madam Chair, my apologies for not having the code section in front of me, but the local boards, in consideration of what the code says is the minimum payment for election officers, can authorize additional payments for election officers. However, under code, election officers can serve without payment if they so choose to waive that payment. So if there were a volunteer that wished to serve, they would automatically be considered and paid. However, if they opted out of that payment, they would not receive that payment. That's part of our onboarding process.
So as a member of the committee, my question was just to clarify, if you had an unpaid volunteer, can they serve just in the morning rush? They don't have to serve for any half-day or full-day period, do they?
So there is no restriction on the service in hours unless that person is serving in the capacity of a chief or assistant chief, in which they're required by code to serve the full day.
Okay. Well, okay. So maybe we should gut the bill and just include the last section. This came at the request of one of my registrars, but lines 130 to 132, I don't know if council could incorporate that. I guess we don't have to say adult volunteers because they're already officers of election and officers can already count these unmarked ballots. But if we can put in the election pages section, the wording election pages may at the direction and under direct supervision of the chief officer of election assist in the counting of unmarked ballots, but shall not handle or touch ballots in any other circumstance. And that should go wherever in the current code it says that they can do it before the polls are open, which would be on lines 89 to 91. I think if we just get rid of prior to the opening of the polls, we would have the correct wording.
Madam Chair, the cleanest way to do this would probably keep the current new section, but we would strike or adult volunteers on line 117, and then we would strike the sentence that begins on 120 that says adult volunteers shall be selected for the election day page program by the electoral board or the general registrar. And we would clean up this section catch line on 115, striking adult volunteers. So the entire section would only refer to the election day page program for high school students. And then we would have the language on lines 130 through 132 that Senator Eben is referencing.
Okay, so just to clarify, we're striking section H further up on the page and adding a new code section about the election day page program. Is that right? And it's just to clean up that piece?
Correct. It would just be a fewer number of line amendments if we do it that way.
Okay. I would so move.
Correct. So on 115, we'd strike the semi-adult volunteers. On line 117, we would strike or adult volunteers. On line 120, we would strike the sentence that begins adult volunteers shall be selected for the election day page program by the electoral board or the general registrar. and then everything else would stay.
Okay, the motion's been made and properly seconded by Senator Reeves. All in favor of adopting those amendments, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so Senate Bill 589 is now before us as amended to remove adult volunteers. Is there a motion? Okay, the motion's been made to report Senate Bill 589 as amended and properly seconded. All in favor of reporting Senate Bill 589, please vote aye. Okay,
Ayes 12, noes 1.
okay, and the bill reports.
And the final bill is Senate Bill 739, which has to do with where local candidates must file their campaign finance reports. We had a situation in one of my localities where a candidate moved to another locality after their campaign ended, and they couldn't track down the candidate. They hadn't closed down their campaign finance account. They wanted to reach them, but she moved to Fairfax, then she moved to Stafford, and campaign finance staff, thank you, at Elect told her that Stafford would now be reviewing her forms because that's now where she lives. But if she'd moved to Maryland, Elect would not have told her that election officials in Maryland should review her forms. So it's just some clarifications. The candidate had some penalties. It would just make it easier for the locality to know that things have been closed out properly.
Okay, is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak on this bill?
Good afternoon again. Paul Latham, President of the Association. I spoke with an assistant registrar or the deputy registrar in the city of Alexandria, and as Senator Eben was saying, apparently there was confusion because the person had moved to another locality, and the Department of Elections was apparently advising them to file the final report in the locality where they had moved to, which obviously creates a bizarre situation. So my understanding from what Senator Evans' bill will do is to try to correct this so that it's clear in the code so that all of this information is reposed in the locality where the person actually ran for office.
Okay, that makes sense. Senator Peake.
Madam Chairman, thank you. The only question, I support the bill, but you say locality, so we're state senate, and so our locality is 10 localities. Shouldn't it read where they initially filed their campaign documents?
Well, I would say, I think it should. I think that's the spirit of it, but I should say also that this is only for people who don't file electronically if you file the paper. So that's a good point. I don't know how, Meg, how we refer to the filing of reports for other pieces, if it says, because we're not, when you file your statement of candidacy or where you give your check, it's to your locality where you live.
That's right.
And
So
I don't know how that tracks.
The campaign finance documents for state senators, for legislators, is filed, I believe, with the Department of Elections.
That's correct.
So that doesn't come to our office. In the local registrar's office, we handle campaign finance filings for purely local candidates, or even if we share, like, say, a constitutional office with another locality. If, say, my sheriff lives in York County, but I share the sheriff with York County and Pocosin, so he files his campaign finance reports with me. But otherwise, if it's a state legislative office or statewide office, that's filed with the Department of Elections.
Madam Chair.
Senator Peake.
Or Mr. Chair, then. I filed my first report by paper, so maybe it's been outlawed. But I think in state senate, you can, unless it's been outlawed, you could still do a paper file. I would just think it should read wherever you did your campaign finance. Is that?
Well, actually, if you look at line,
I'll
that's
tell
a
you what,
statewide.
I withdraw my questions, and I'm in full support of this bill. Let's get on with it.
Yeah, because
Okay.
we're talking about candidates for local or constitutional
Great
office.
idea.
Is the-
Okay, the motion's, is there a motion? Motion's been made and properly seconded to report Senate Bill 739.
Madam Clerk.
Yes, Senator Chase.
I have a question of the patron. This bill, will it enable any registrar to view the donor information of any candidate, even if they withdraw from the race per Section D?
If they would enable any registrar to do what?
To view the donor information of any candidate,
No, this is,
even if they withdraw?
let me see, I'm just flipping my pages in these different bills. This is a final report. Would it enable who to view?
Will it enable any registrar to view the donor information of any candidate if they withdraw from the race?
It would enable, and maybe someone can correct me if I'm wrong, it would enable the same registrar who most people start out filing with when they close their account to see it. So it's the same registrar as you've been running in when you file your closeout. Is that correct, Meg?
Almost. This bill actually, what it does is this doesn't address the issue of where you're filing your final report. It addresses the issue of if you haven't yet filed your final report, but you've moved localities, but maybe you haven't closed out your final account, you're trying to decide what you're going to do as you move forward. So it's addressing where you file those subsequent finance reports that are not the final report.
Anything after you've moved?
Anything after you've moved, but you haven't closed out your account, but you're also not currently holding office.
And I think what Senator Chase was getting at is that same information's already available before you've moved at that same place.
So no new information is going to become available under this. It's just, we're talking about where someone's going to be filing if they've moved, and we're in a very weird
If I may, this is, I believe, an effort to create a consistent rule that would be applicable everywhere so that you're not chasing people once the election is concluded, it's over, and they've now moved somewhere else, and you're not trying to chase down a filing. Does that make sense? So that the public has the ability to go and locate that termination report. That's effectively what we're trying to do. If somebody wants to go online and see what was the termination report, you're not trying to decide if the person's now moved 6 times. That's a way to, maybe.
And perhaps even more importantly,
be
that the
evasive.
registrar knows that there is a valid termination report that's been filed somewhere. And
Right.
if
It's
in
just a
their
simple
office,
compliance cleanup piece. Okay. All right. The motion's been made and properly seconded to report Senate Bill 739. All in favor, please vote aye.
Thank you.
13-0.
Okay, we have 2 patrons left. One is Senator Deeds and one is myself. And I'm going to ask if Senator Deeds would be willing to allow me to have one bill go forward because we have a number of people who sat here for such a long time. And it's a little bit rude for the committee chair to go ahead of anybody else at the very end. But I have 2 bills. One is Senate Bill 592, and there was a request that please go by for the day. That was a bill that has to do with personal use of campaign funds, so that will, without objection, go by for the day, unless there's an objection. And then the other bill was Senate Bill 591. And there was also a request that discussion of that bill be carried over, but there were people who traveled some distance to be here. So I would love to have you come forward as I explain this bill. This bill has to do with post-election risk-limiting audits. And this has generated, I believe, a little bit of confusion, but I will just tell you why the bill is before you. And that is because there has been a real effort towards trying to come up with best practices. And while there may be some disagreement about what those best practices may be, I think there is virtually unanimous agreement that there should be some best practices in terms of a post-election risk-limiting audit. And I think all the registrars and all the election professionals and everybody in the process agrees that that would be helpful. It could save money, and it would just create a whole lot of, it would help get rid of a lot of headaches and create some confidence in the process. So with that, the bill that I have proposed is a bill that would seek to bring a proposal for a risk-limiting audit to the General Assembly. My bill would not actually pass the details of such a plan in this session. It would direct that risk-limiting audit to be studied or or discussed and put together, and then it would come back before this body in 2020. There are people here who wish to speak, and I know you've waited a long time, and some of you traveled a great distance, and I apologize that we have let you go to the end. But that's my explanation of the bill. Without getting way down in the weeds, I would love for you all to come forward because I know you want to speak in favor of the bill. And then if we need to carry it over until next week because we have questions or we want to further refine the actual language of this proposal, we can certainly do that. But I wanted you to have the chance to speak so that you can while you're here.
Thank you, Senator Vogel, Chairwoman Vogel. Thank you for the opportunity to testify before the committee in support of Senate Bill 591. My name is Marianne Schneider, and I am president of Verified Voting, a national, nonpartisan, nonprofit information and advocacy organization focused exclusively on ensuring the security, integrity, and trustworthiness of computerized election technology. We protect the fundamental right to vote where voting intersects technology. Before joining Verified Voting this past October, I was previously the Deputy Secretary of State for Pennsylvania, and I oversaw elections during the 2016 presidential election. And after the 2016 election, it's clear that legislatures and officials across the country need to take steps to instill confidence in elections and prevent destructive narratives from undermining our democratic processes. Senate Bill 591 does just that. Virginia has demonstrated its leadership by acquiring new equipment in all localities, with voter-marked paper ballots as the primary voting method. Paper ballots are secure because they cannot be altered by software. But it's not enough just to have paper ballots. Virginia needs to use those ballots to verify that the results reported by the electronic scanners are correct. Senate Bill 591 establishes post-election ballot audits in all statewide and federal contests. These audits, known as risk-limiting audits, provide a high measure of quality control in the most efficient way, using as few additional resources as possible. The bill establishes a 5% risk limit, which is the maximum chance that a wrong outcome will be certified. In other words, if any outcome-changing tabulation errors occur for a specified contest, officials would have a 95% chance of detecting such errors. Appropriately, the specifics of how those audits would be implemented are not articulated. The bill would require the State Board of Elections and the Department of Elections to establish a work group comprised of knowledgeable stakeholders. The work group will develop the processes to implement risk-limiting audits in a way that works best for Virginia, taking into account current law, election administration practices, and resources. This bill also contains a reenactment clause so that the General Assembly can have the report of the work group before risk-limiting audits are finally adopted in Virginia. This bill does not require a 100% hand recount of every race. This bill does not even mandate that all races be audited, although that would be ideal. What the bill does is start a process in Virginia for adopting a method to allow for a sample of ballots to be chosen and used to check the electronic tally. When a sample shows discrepancies or errors, more ballots would need to be selected for sampling. When a risk-limiting audit is working, it could detect enough errors that would result in the escalation of the sampling to a full recount. But our hope and our expectation is that would be the exception to the rule. What Senate Bill 591 does is provide for the responsible administration of elections. Routine post-election audits provide much-needed confidence in the election outcomes. It's critical for our democracy that the winners know that they won the election and that the losers accept that they lost. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you so much. Yes, ma'am.
To the chairperson. I am Audrey Malagon. I'm Associate Professor of Mathematics at Virginia Wesleyan University. I'm a mathematician who studied the mathematics associated with risk-limiting audits and sampling in order to ensure quality control. And so what I will say to risk-limiting audits is that they're a sort of best practice or gold standard in auditing. They ensure quality control and the integrity of your election. And while there's flexibility for you in Virginia to figure out what exactly works best for Virginia and how to implement a risk limiting audit, basically what a risk limiting audit is a strategic process that makes sure you're really only checking what you need to check. So it gives you a way to really carefully allocate the resources to select a sample that gives you a good picture of what's going on to ensure the integrity of your elections. When you really use a random sample, as risk limiting audits do, and you do this after the votes are cast but before the outcome is certified, this gives you the opportunity to catch and correct any errors of any kind, machine errors, voter errors. It really allows you to see how well the process is working. And it does that in one efficient process. So one efficient process is letting you kind of look at all of these types of errors. And also, more importantly, using a random sample will also distribute the workload proportionally, so it's not going to overburden your smaller precincts when you do a random representative sample.
Is there anybody else who wants to speak? Go ahead.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, once again, Robin Lind speaking on behalf of the Virginia Electoral Board Association. We support this very enthusiastically, and I must say we did an awful lot of work in the GREB work group trying to understand the impact of the existing legislation, and this would solve all of the concerns that were raised in the GREB work group.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, thank you for bringing this bill. This speaks a little bit towards one of the previous bills that Senator Edwards had brought about in terms of some more accountability for the Department of Elections. If there were certain accountability standards, the chair would not have had to have offered this bill because we would have had in place the mechanisms to enforce current law. So that being said, definitely appreciate the opportunity to relook at this and bring what is needed in terms of ensuring integrity of the electoral process and what our machines are actually doing. Just a few concerns personally, and on behalf of Fairfax, I think the biggest, which I think could be addressed through the implementation work group, would actually be the financial impact. I know in discussions in preparing for this current implementation that exists in current law, it's been the biggest issue that we've had is looking at how much do we actually allocate towards our budget so that we can accommodate this and that we can accommodate it appropriately. One of the things about the current version of the Chairwoman's bill is that I have a little bit of concern about is the timing of when the actual, I was about to say recount, but when the actual audit would occur. And I think in between the certification and the election itself might have some concerns. I know specifically one of the concerns, and I don't want to speak on behalf of the Clerks Association, but the clerks of court during recounts, one of the things that they are charged with is ensuring that the ballots and all election materials are absolutely and have been secured in accordance with all the laws. I don't think they would be able to meet those requirements if we were to have access to the ballots prior to the certification, as well as the issue of using the images as opposed to the ballots themselves, I think could possibly be addressed. All the certified ballot tabulators currently are using digital images, and those digital images now have the opportunity to be reviewed and audited. And those are actually what, through the mechanisms of the tabulators themselves, are being tabulated. It's not the ballots themselves. So I would strongly urge looking at the ballot images and the actual timing of the implementation of the audits before passing this one. But I do appreciate the
So to my earlier point, I would like to have everybody very comfortable with the language of this bill, even though we are not passing or committing Virginia, the Commonwealth of Virginia, to any post-election audit. I still would like everybody to be comfortable with this, which is why when someone made the request that we carried over until next week and have a little bit of time to work on this language, I'm totally fine with that, but I did not want to trespass on the opportunity of the people who were here today to speak.
Absolutely.
So unless anybody has a major objection, I'm going to carry it over until next week in response to a request by the registrars that we get this language perfect. And then we have the time to work in the interim to come up with the post-election risk limiting audit that everybody's comfortable with, and then we'll be back in 2020 to pass such a bill. So with that, we will move on, and I apologize, Senator Deeds, that you had to wait so long.
necessary, Madam Chair. The bill I've got is 674, and an effort to provide full disclosure. Last year, this was Senate Bill 1059. We had a fiscal impact statement. They said there was no fiscal impact, but it was passed by indefinitely in this committee on a 9-5 vote. It's a same-day voter registration pilot project. A couple years ago, I was at an NCSL meeting and talked to some legislators from Utah. Utah, one of the most conservative states in the country, has same-day voter registration, and it works very well out there. And I thought that being the Virginia way, the whole idea behind this bill is not to have statewide same-day voter registration, but to do it by pilot project. And the way this bill proposes it is that it would be a completely voluntary program for counties or cities to participate in. Under the pilot, someone who's not registered to vote on the day of the election, they provide a valid driver's license, a passport, some other photo ID, and proof of residency, and they can vote. Similar to a provisional ballot, the ballot's placed in an envelope with the full name, gender, date of birth, social security number, all the identifying information on the outside of the envelope. At its meeting following the electoral election, the electoral board will determine whether the person is indeed eligible to register to vote and whether then to count the ballot. The board shall provide the information to the state board on the number of ballots cast under this pilot program, and the State Board of Elections under this bill provides a report to the General Assembly prior to by the 2020 session, so we can figure out whether we want to do this statewide. It just seems to me that we ought to be about making it easier to register to vote and easier to vote. And if this works in other states, I think we're up to maybe 13 or 14 states to do this now. I first noticed it in Utah, and I've driven through Utah, but I don't have any connections there. But if it works there, by golly, why can't it work here?
Okay, well, maybe the committee will have a different view this time.
Maybe.
Okay. So with that, I would be very interested to hear from any members of the audience who are registrars or other folks who have an opinion on this bill. Is there anybody who would be willing to speak or who wishes to speak? Don't everybody rush to the podium at one time. Since it's Registrar Tuesday and we actually have you here, it would be a tragedy not to hear from you.
Madam Chair, Kirk Showalter, City of Richmond. I have no particular position one way or another. I think same-day registration is a policy question. However, I do have concern about the language on line 39. Under current code, it is the registrars that are vested with the authority to determine if somebody's qualified to register to vote. And this language would put that authority for the same-day registration program in the hands of the electoral board. So I would ask that the committee consider that impact on our voter registration laws.
Okay, thank you. Yes, ma'am. Welcome again.
I'm Valerie Philgrove with League of Women Voters of Virginia. Yes, the League of Women Voters, we do support same-day registration. We have, as a matter of fact, I even participated when they did it in Wisconsin, same-day voter registration. I've lived out west where they also had it, and it works very well. It's really surprising how well it does work, but many times people do not think about voting until they get closer to the election. And even though we have a shorter period of time between the date of our registration and the election than maybe other states do, same day, it still comes down to the same thing. People 5 days before the election, 4 days, decide that they want to vote, and of course they're ineligible to have it registered. So we would support opening up voter registration to same day.
Madam Chair,
Senator Sproul.
I'd like to ask Senator Deeds, same day is fine, but in Utah, there's nobody in Utah. You can count them all on one hand. So, so you can do that in Utah, but on the same day, on election day, the registrar's office in most cities are busy and they're heavy, and especially in Chesapeake and North Virginia, you're real heavy. So do they have time to start doing something extra? Are we going to allow them to hire somebody extra to pay them to do that?
Madam Chair.
So, like I said, I understand what he's saying. But you can drive across Utah and you're lucky if you find 5 people in Utah.
So Senator Sproul, you must be a savant who can read minds, because I saw some registrars who did not get up and speak, but I saw their heads bobbing up and down when you said that. So, sorry, Senator Deeds.
Madam Chair, of course, there are a few people in Utah. Salt Lake City's a pretty good-sized place. And this bill provides for a pilot project on a voluntary basis. If their localities don't want to participate in this, they don't have to participate in it before we see how it works. And the reason why, as a matter of policy, the reason why the electoral board and not simply the registrar determine whether the vote should count is simply because we're doing something completely different here in Virginia. And so I thought it might make it more palatable if you I didn't mean to offend registrars, but I meant to make sure that more people had a chance to have input into the decision about whether or not a particular ballot ought to count. It ought to be determined whether a person is eligible to vote.
Yes, ma'am.
The only thing I ask is that you please include some localities that have universities and colleges, because that's going to be a huge impact. And in my little office with 2 of us working, we would have to hire extra people, and it would be impacted. It would impact us somewhat. So I would be interested to see how the college community, if it really would be a big difference. So, and I don't want to be the college town to do it, but somebody, let somebody else do it.
Okay. Okay. The committee operates. Senator Eben.
I wanted to make a motion, but before I did, I wanted to speak to the bill briefly. Some of the benefits of same-day voter registration is it increases turnout, but also I think one of the registrars said that people pay attention most close to the election. And, it's a bit of an arbitrary deadline that cut off registration when most people are interested. Further, we have, people are concerned about inaccurate voter rolls. A lot of times people will come up to me in Alexandria or Arlington and say, hey, I'm here to vote, and is this my precinct? And I say, or they said I can't vote here. I said, well, did you move? And they said, well, I moved. And I say, you've got to go back to where you lived within the last 6 months if you did. And this would help get it to be accurate. Right now, you can file a form on Election Day saying you moved, but you can't just vote in your new precinct. And then lastly, it reduces the need for provisional balloting, because if they live there and you've got the ID, you're good. You don't have to say, I think I should vote there. So with that, I was going to move that we report the bill.
I'm just going to make an observation really quickly before I call for the vote. And that is, we've had a lot of discussion, and I've had a discussion with Senator Eben as well as Senator Howell and a number of people, because we have some very significant pieces of legislation and proposals before us this year, many of which I support, some of which I am actually a patron, that would make substantial changes to the election laws in Virginia, and specifically how it is we carry out elections. Has to do with absentee voting. Senator Deeds has this bill. What I have proposed and would like to do is I have a joint subcommittee where we send some of these bills that would actually require a significant change in Virginia, that would require a lot of input from registrars, would require significant change in resources, so that we actually do a good job and do it more than in 2 hours in a committee. So this is consistent with sort of something that would require more study. We can entertain a motion on this bill. We could certainly consider sending that bill on for further study over the course of that year. But I just mentioned that because I've heard from a lot of registrars that we have a lot of great ideas and a lot of good things that Virginia wants to consider, because certainly times are changing, technology's changing, the needs of the electorate is changing, but Virginia's resources are not as fluid, and we don't adapt as quickly. So in an effort to do that, I hope that we will make some good decisions over the next year and can move Virginia forward in a direction that works for everybody, but most of all, functions for our registrars in a way that's practical. So with that, I just want to make that observation. Anyway, is there a motion?
Madam Chair.
That might not be as relevant to your bill,
Can I-
but yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
Are you proposing to create a joint subcommittee or of something with the House P&E committee to study issues over the interim? Is that?
Yes, that's what I'm hopeful that we will be able to accomplish, because I think there are a lot of good bills that in the past have failed because they are complicated and because we have challenges of resources, and we have registrars who stand up and rightfully say, we do not have the people. We do not have the ability to do this. And some of those are, yeah. And this might be ripe for that. And this is premature because this is not something that I was going to bring up until our next meeting when we have all those bills. Early absentee, in fact, some of them are my bills. But I know that when we present some of these bills, the registrars are going to stand up and say, hey, we might agree in concept, but we do not have the ability to make such a dramatic change given the fact that we don't have the resources and it hasn't been we're not prepared. So because I feel strongly that some of these proposals are good, and I believe that it's time for Virginia to make some changes, it's a little premature to throw that out there, but I've thrown that out there because I think it's relevant for your bill. So,
Madam Chair, I'd make the motion to pass it by for the year to keep it in the rest of the committee, and that'd be the minimum of the motion, and should the committee arise that this would be primary to go to that committee.
okay, motion's been made and properly seconded to carry the bill over for the year, and perhaps that could be part of the discussion that we have in the subcommittee. With that, all in favor, please vote aye. Okay, that concludes, yes, Senator Eben.
I understand we're going to carry these bills over to study. If the House doesn't want to form a joint subcommittee, can we still do that ourselves?
Absolutely, we can.
Great. Okay, we'll look forward to that, whichever way.
Okay, the committee will rise.